Yeah. It's not a deal.
And then they would like to have it. They want to so that we're not like. Yeah, to do that would be different.
You're right.
You're right, so it's not.
You separate your back. You can figure out a way for it. It's not short of it. Let's get rid of the resources.
Yeah, it's good as well. That's nice.
I don't need to send you an email, everybody's.
No, I've got it, thanks very much.
You're gonna about a minute?
There's one. Not.
No expensive. Yes.
I'm making double sure.
Yeah.
It wasn't showing up in my dress in my and outbox or anything, so I thought. Yeah.
All right, I'd like to call to order the Whitewater Township Planning Commission, regular meeting, fourth, 7 p.m. Pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Check microphones. We'll call with PC members.
Dion,
Here.
Stratton, here, Pelton in here, Robo,
There.
Bosler,
Here.
Merchant, here, Milnick.
Here. Any requests to set or adjust the meeting agenda?
I would like to, I have one. I would like to suggest, since we did not get to the STR ordinance application at the last meeting, I'd like to, suggest moving that up in the, agenda.
Just before the meeting minutes?
Okay.
After the public hearing?
Okay.
Do you have any issues with that? And then also I'd like to move up EIS. Also after the public hearing. There'll be 3 will be public hearings, 4 will be AIS, 5 will be STRs. And then I'll move on to 6 approval of minutes, 7 correspondence, 8 reports and so on. Everybody all right with that?
Yes.
Okay. We need to have a vote for that.
Not that specifically, but you do need a motion to approve the agenda as amended, but that you don't have any.
Make a motion, we change the agenda. To read the such.
Stratton seconds.
Stratton?
Yep.
Pelton, yes, Robo,
Yes.
Bosler,
Yes.
Merchant, yes, Milnick,
Yes.
Dion.
Yes. Okay. Declaration of conflict of interest pertinent to any agenda item. Sadie, I think you should mention the firm
Do I have to be, is it a conflict of interest though, if I'm not
just to vote.
just to vote?
I don't know if we'll be doing any voting today or not, but
Okay,
it wouldn't hurt just to mention it.
a conflict of interest with, number is that? 7B. Well, now it's 9B or 8B.
Yeah.
Minors and reasons.
No, the 9,
9,
10.
wineries and tasting room one.
70?
Well, 70.
7, 8. No, you're right, 9, sorry.
90.
So is. Are you indicating there may be a potential conflict of interest over this?
Other is if it comes to a vote to that. Which I don't believe will be yet today, so she just to put that out there so we know.
Transparency.
All right, is any other? Unheard public comment. Any person shall be permitted to address the meeting of the PC. Public comments shall be carried out in accordance with the following rules and procedures. Comments shall be directed to the PC chair with questions to the PC with questions directed to the chair. Any person wishing to address the PC shall speak from the lectern or use they won't be able to read that on Zoom, so. Just state his or her name and address. Person may address the PC on matters that are relevant to the township planning and zoning issues. No person shall be allowed to speak more than once on the same matter, excluding the time needed to answer any PC member's question. Public comment shall be limited to 3 minutes per person. Do we have anybody here who'd like to speak at public comment? First one.
Would you also indicate I have a sheet here so that I can get the names
Yes.
and spelling proper? Thank you. And there's a separate one for the public hearing.
You could write your name on there for it, please.
Sure.
Public hearing, yes. What's that?
David's gonna use his timer.
Oh, thanks. Yes.
My name is Kim Mangus. First, before you go into your record keeping, your meeting minutes state that I objected to Grand Traverse Plastics. Change in zoning. I did not, nor do I. So if you could correct that, I'd appreciate it. I'd like to speak about AIS. I know you have that coming up and most likely for a vote today. I would like to encourage you to consider just about any alternative that can be found to rezoning to industrial. The concern, as I stated before, is not AIS. As much for me as it is industrial. Industrial allows stamping plants, slaughterhouses, just about anything. The purpose of zoning is to protect, historically, was to protect residential from industrial. Rezoning property adjacent to residential does not do that. Other things that can be done, rezone that I would find more favorable, rezone the additional property to commercial. At least then it's not industrial. And almost everything can be done on commercial, as can be done on industrial, except for the really heavy industrial uses. Rezone the entire property to commercial. Allow the school without any rezoning whatsoever. We have always allowed schools, both public and private, in any district. You could provide a use variance. That was done with the adjacent property for Kinko when they had the pipe placed there. You will notice an additional property just south of their original location that had a use variance for storage of pipe. So this would not be out of line and out of step with previous practices. They were not given an expansion of industrial, they were given a use variance. You could also include, make an adjustment to the commercial district to allow specifically heavy equipment storage. Any of those options would be preferable to rezoning property adjacent to residential homes industrial. Thank you.
Would you even get to the vote hands?
Most likely.
Just so that you can indicate where it's found.
Go ahead, sir. You could sign it up there for us, please, just so the recording secretary has your name.
Yeah, John Warren, and I'll speak to the EIS. I'm a newer resident and I recognize the need for myself to better inform myself to make intelligent comment. I can get the zoning map on my computer, but very little else. I don't find the master plan there that I can open and so forth. Most things I don't seem to be able to open. So I have to get some things in paper, I guess, to be able to speak more intelligently. That said, I hope the township has a clear and cogent plan for the future and exemplified in the zoning map that I find there. I think that's exemplified what's gone on in our neighbor Acme and we're next, really. That said, I hope we have an area proposal in our master plan for an industrial area. Clearly moved by a buffer zone from any future residential areas. The existing industrial area that's zoned as such, I think is already unacceptably close to residential property. And I think they've been in clear violation of our noise ordinance for a long time, as exemplified by the comments at the May 7 meeting. I came then mostly in support of my closer neighbors, but when I walked out of my home, which is 850 feet back in the woods, first thing I heard the morning I went out to check was the backup alarms on their vehicles. It just exemplifies the distance, the buffer zone that is needed, the pipe, Kim mentioned the pipes, man, when that place was there, the noise was incredible. And I guess people still get awakened at 5, 6 in the morning by the noise that AIS or someone makes there. So I really think, we have a big industrial zone somewhere and that's where people go. We want to expand. They want to stay in this township and want to have an industrial area. I hope we have that coming up in a zoning map. So in principle, I oppose this expansion. I fully agree with Kim's comments. I think the commercial zone along M72 has to be kept light commercial. We just can't have a continual expansion of industrial along M72. And speaking to AIS, it's beautifully removed from M72. If they requested to keep a beautiful entry to the city of Acme and Traverse City, we've got that, but we've got it all in the back flowing into our residential area. And I don't think that's appropriate. I'd say let them clear half the trees to the road, start letting them use that. Thank you. Any questions?
Signed in. Hello, my name is Jerry Tomzak. I own the property directly east of the proposed applicant, AIS. I own 17 acres. I mentioned last month at this planning commission meeting, my concerns when I did my due diligence prior to the purchase. I made sure to look at the master plan and the zoning map. I wanted to make sure that I was protecting myself in the event someone came forward with a request such as what I'm here tonight. And I've written a letter. And I think zoning administrator gave it to each of you. I'd like to read a couple of important points to it. I've already expressed my discontent with the request, as mentioned by a few of the others that spoke earlier. It's the concern with me, the industrial. I'm willing to agree and understand that if they want a training facility, I would help understand and agree to something like that. And it is allowed in the R2 district. It's a school. But I think there's more to the story, because if they're pushing for a rezoning, it's going to be more than a training facility. That wasn't expressed last week. I know they've had a meeting with a few of the residents. I was not invited to the meeting. I didn't meet them. I've already expressed my concerns to the zoning administrator. But most importantly, the master plan is there for a reason. I used to be a zoning administrator. I understand. You're contradicting the master plan if you approve this. You're opening yourself up for other opportunities, including myself. I'll bring a request forward to rezone the west side of my property, protect my buffer from the R2. If they are allowed to do industrial. I'm not saying it as a threat, it's just, I need to protect my interests. I want to develop the land for R2. I hope to dream to approve the barn to build duplexes that are permitted under a site condo arrangement. And I'll bring that forth over the next few months. I've expressed the concerns as noted before, but more importantly, the standards of review for the zoning ordinance. For rezoning, section 2104 or 2105. One of them, the most important is the rezoning request consistent with the goals, policies, and objectives of the township's master plan? 100% no. Does not comply. Item H. If a rezoning request is request, the compatibility of all potential uses allowable in the proposed district. It goes on. A rezoning would devalue my property along with some of the adjacent homes. Well, no one wants to be next to industrial. I would put each of you in my position. You bought property with the intent of building on it. You want industrial next to you, if it wasn't already zoned for it. So I will bring forth a request if it is approved under rezone. Now I am willing to a use variance. I noted that in my letter in the last page. Give them a permitted use, it may not be required, it's R2, since training facilities and schools are allowed. I just wanted to bring that to your attention. Appreciate your time. And I left copies here for letter.
Charles Davis, I live at 8500 Chris Road. I've spoken a few different times to both the town board, which you had last week, I believe it was. I just don't understand pushing industrial into the R2 area, and then the other piece that is agricultural. And agricultural, I think, is, as I mentioned at the board meeting, the joint board meeting. Obviously, there's not gonna be much agricultural on that piece of property. Because it's houses all the way over towards the Moore Road from there. So I just, in a school. It's not like it's a public educational school, you know, it's like, well, Elk Rapids type school that they're interested in. It's actually, you know, if you've got heavy equipment. And they had students that come. Obviously, to work on equipment. You have to start it up sometimes, a lot. There's gonna be a lot more noise to some extent if they do this type of school. You're gonna have more noise, and I know some of it is that maybe they tear apart the engine, then they learn how to put rings in it, you know, they know how to do all that stuff, you know, get the timing right, you know, get the injectors right for the diesel and all that stuff, and work on the tracks and all, and look at all the different pumps and the hydraulic systems that are in those nowadays. It's just gonna add, I think, to the wrong place in our community at this time. And I understand why AIS wants to do it. I do understand. Now, is there a major void for a lot of young people to work on equipment? You know, I don't actually know if there is or not. You know, that the trades seem to be the way things are going versus the educational or in the college level and the whole student loan deal that started 20 to 30 years ago, and a lot of people owe a lot of money in that particular situation. It still's not resolved, but it's got nothing to do with it. I'm just against it. I hate to see it come this way. And then I heard that one idea of theirs was to build this big berm. Well, is the berm gonna be on the industrial part, or are they gonna push it into the other land? You know, I mean, I don't know what their alternative plan is. Were they supposed to bring that tonight? Are they going to bring it tonight? Another plan, or is this strictly? We're going to okay you send it to the board for a vote. I don't understand at this time.
Thank you for your
Time, thank you.
anybody else?
Hi, I'm Lisa Bowerman, 806 Crisp Road. So I gave a letter of support after meeting with, Mr. Johnson and he showed me where the berm's gonna go. We talked about all the stuff. If, you know, I'm not against the school, I'm supportive, their company is growing. But like Kim mentioned earlier, if there's an alternative instead of industrial, I mean, I would be all for that. And again, I did say, give you guys a letter of support. And that's based on, I did talk to Mr. Johnson several times, and the berm is gonna be built, and he showed me where it's gonna be built and all the plans and trees with that. So, and that there's no entrance on Crisp Road, I live directly in back of that. And that, therefore, there would be no more traffic on Crisp Road. So that being said, if there is an alternative, that would be great. Thank you.
Is there anybody else? Anybody else coming forward? We will close the public comment session. All right, we'll move on to the public hearing. Public hearing, open a public hearing at 7:20. This is a review case, SLDP.
We need a motion to actually open.
Make the motion, we open this public hearing.
Second proposed.
Roll call vote. No, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? None. Okay, this is to review case SLUP 2025-2 Uncle Bill's Orchard. I request any of you here that want to speak for this, please send it, sign the attendance sheet for the public hearing. This public hearing was published May 20th, 2025 in the Record Eagle. When you come out, please state the purpose of your what you're speaking about. If we could get a brief introductory presentation by the zoning administrator.
Hi there. Hi there. I'll try that. Alan is allergies, all these wonderful weather we're having. The pollen. Uncle Bill's Orchard is located on Elk Lake Road. You kind of can see it from the road. You see a nice little red fruit stand that's out there. He's wanting to remove that stand and build a sizable full barn. Wants to include a retail space, sell things from his farm, but also some additional items. Basically a major home occupation, and put in a commercial kitchen. There'll be a cooler, a freezer section, a restroom for his staff that are working there. He's told me he's planning to move into the home that's located there on that piece of property as well. So this would be a major home occupation, that he would live at the property and then run this business. His wife and his son do the baking of the pies. Basically, he can do exactly what he's wanting to do with a retail fruit stand, farm stand, based on the way our definition is in our ordinance. But if he wants to incorporate an additional, anything above and beyond 50% affiliated with his farm, he has to have it a home-based business kind of special use. So if he wanted to put in t-shirts or flowers or anything he wasn't producing on his farm, any of those additional items beyond the 50% allowed in our definition for a farm stand, he would be required to have this special use. So the reason we're here tonight is because he doesn't want that limitation on him and he doesn't want to be held in check on that. So once he has a special use, it runs with the land. He also wants to plan this out for his son to take over this business at Uncle Bill's Orchard and make sure it runs with the land, and he can probably explain a little bit more of what he wants to do. But that's why we're here tonight, for this special hearing, or for this hearing at the regular meeting. Any questions for me?
Just a quick one, on
Yeah.
page 5, you have a list of facts that you've identified related to this.
Yes,
I'll make sure everyone saw that.
yes, I did. You know, it is ag property. It does fit with the roadside stand. Farm markets are permitted in zoning ordinance 4.10. Farm markets require 50% of the products offered to be produced and or affiliated with the farm. Major home occupations are allowed in an accessory structure with a special use permit per 5.09B, allowing the applicant to retail additional items not affiliated with the farm. So home occupation does require his residence to be on the parcel. He's told me this construction is, I've already written him a permit to build the accessory structure. He plans to move into the home and have his business up and running spring of next year. They've been producing pies at 8392 Elk Lake Road and selling them at the location at 8150 Elk Lake Road. Mr. McCauley, he is here tonight. They're relocating. Land use application was approved back on March 12th for him to begin construction on his accessory structure. And the only additional item to factor in is, I'm not sure he's gotten approval from the fire department yet regarding the turning radius for a fire truck. And so that may be another item to take into consideration. But I did try to list some facts for you to base your consideration on.
Also, I have a question, I believe that the zoning requirement is to be 12, the building be 12 feet back from the road.
Minimum, but since
Minimum.
this is gonna be a fruit stand that he's gonna have,
But it says on the drawing here, if I'm reading it right, that it's only 10 feet back.
that's a septic field, I believe.
Oh, okay.
That's between him and the health department on that day in the septic field. Okay. All right, thanks.
Then any written comments received?
Yes, they were in our package. Rob Thomas, two of the neighbors, both, were for it, in support of it.
Is it Rob Thomas?
Yeah.
Thomas Rob.
Oh, you know what, it was, I'm sorry, I keep saying it. Thomas Rob.
Thomas,
Sorry. Sorry, and very Yankee, diamonds in my head.
Yankee. Very Yankee still.
Yeah, I think they're actually listed under number 500 correspondence.
That's why I was asking the order of that meeting, thanks.
All right, so 2 letters of support. You'll open up a couple public comments for that. Is there any public comments for? Yeah, here, but that was the applicant here. Yes, yeah.
There's no public hearing now, I did finish that, sorry.
Yes, I would like to back up just a second. The applicant themselves would like to speak. Pardon me? The applicant, would you like to speak?
I think it doesn't cover it pretty much. I mean, we're asking to do what we're doing already, you know, just a little bigger retail or kitchen.
Anybody have any questions for him?
I have one question. Are there any plans to sell wholesale at any point?
Well, we already do. We already have it for years.
Wholesale from that building or from just your whole.
From the barn that's already existing, we've got a decent sized cooler in there. It's running, you know.
Okay.
Which has been going on. Okay.
Yeah.
It's not like we have semis in there, so, you know. Panel loads. I wish we did.
Would you say that 50% of your,
Can't hear you, Denise.
oh, sorry. Would you say 50% of your business now is from the produce of your farm?
Yes.
So you're over 50%.
But I don't want, I'd like to get this permit and not have to worry about being police. You know, what if we froze out? I should be able to source product to get by a year. You know, from my cousins or.
Yeah.
You know, a guy downstairs or another farmer that has a crop. So I don't want, you know, I don't want to be restricted that way.
You see. Part of it, the requirement is a 50% of the. I've got to get the quote here from the ordinance, floor space. 50% of the products must be produced on, measured by retail floor space during peak production. So I'm wondering with your new your new location, your floor space, I'm trying to figure out what you would. You have 540 square feet of retail space. So over half of that would be, do the math to me, 270 square feet. That would be involved with selling your produce from your farm.
Hopefully at least.
Yeah.
Plus.
Yeah, so you're already covered with the floor space aspect of the ordinance. I'm just curious as to where you're. What why you actually need us to do anything to help you.
Well, when I came in here the end of January, 1st of February, if I'd have known that was the situation, I said, wonderful, man. I'll take that permit. It's gotta be gone, but that wasn't the case. I was told I had to go through all this. And then it was like 3.5 weeks ago, Deb stopped in the yard and told me that I didn't need to go through all this. And I'm like, what's going on here?
Yeah.
And so we got in the mindset, okay, we'll get this permit and we can sell other stuff. So I could buy flowers, right?
Yeah.
You know, I could, get Mr. Porter's beef down the road and sell it at my stand. And I'm not pleased by anybody running around with a ticket book asking, what's yours? What are you producing? What are you producing? Where's the revenue? So, I mean, we're not asking to put in pleasures for you or something like that.
Yeah.
It's gonna be farm based.
Yeah, I think I think pretty much you're covered. I don't see what you need if you want. But, okay,
Yeah, I think that can clarify that, because what she clarified with me with, so what he's asking to is sell more than 50%.
He's actually doing a home occupation.
Yes. That's for home
Yes.
occupation, but we'll let Deb explain that here.
Like you just said, 50% of his farm stand has to be produced, 50% or more from his property. Just like you just said about if he gets frosted out and has no product, he can't open his doors. But if he has this special use, he also knew the rates were going up with our pricing schedule. We had an increase on all of our rates in occasion. And so I think he makes a really good point that if he wants to sell other vendors, I mean, he's got a prime location along Elk Lake Road. And he's planning on having an overhang as well as the interior space. And if he wants to sell plants or flowers and he's not growing them on his farm, but he's bringing them in wholesale and retailing them out. He wants that to be an option and he's trying to plan ahead for his the future with his farm and his son taking over the business.
But technically, he's asking for a major home occupation
Yes,
and not a farm stand.
well,
Because if he was, then we wouldn't have to go through this.
the major home occupation, well, my interpretation of it is. The farm stand, he can only produce, he's gotta produce 50% or more from his property. And if he wants to bring in anything 51% or more from somewhere else, which I'm not gonna be the one policing it or walking around with a ticket book to figure out what's Lou's selling today. Cause that's not my job to do, so, but if he wants to do more than 50% based on the farm stand ordinance definition of a farm stand, major home occupation.
I
So-
think Brandy's point is that the use request should be major home occupation instead of roadside stand.
Well, he put the request in, that was his writing, he wrote it out as a roadside stand. So I accepted his application the way he wrote it.
Okay.
So, and you can always kick it back. No, but right now, my interpretation is as a major home occupation that if he wants to sell above that 50%, he's gonna need to have a major home occupation, live on the property, which we discussed. But it's really kind of up to the planning commission. He is operating a commercial kitchen, he's meeting all the MDR and the health restrictions, as far as I know, at his other property. But this is something he is moving to this parcel, so it's gonna be independent and pertain to just this parcel. So he's moving it from one parcel to another, and I couldn't find any record where he'd ever been through the planning commission process to have an occupation that is home occupation that is private residence. So all I'm trying to do is get it to all go through. I'm trying to get the properties into compliance in this entire
So
Whitewater Township.
essentially, you're trying to make your farm so that it's more sustainable in today's society and to have a retail space that offers farm related agricultural things, local produce, flowers, t-shirts that support farming, etc. Correct? Essentially, that's what you're asking for. So if we can, I don't know how you change the reuse request so that we understand it's home occupancy. I understand what you're saying, that there is a law that 50% has to be from your farm if you're considered, the way our ordinance is written, to be a farm market. However, if you want to be above and beyond that, you have to jump through the hoops and you need a major home occupancy, is that's what it's asking for. So
Yes,
that makes sense to me. I think it's great. You do have to be here. I understand like how you're saying you're confused, it's confusing, but you do have to ask for this, but I think that if your drawings look great and if that's what you want, and that's what you want to do, then yeah, you're in the right place. That's what you do.
do you have any other questions for me?
I do, I just would like to get clarification. So when you say you sell wholesale, so you're selling to other retailers?
Correct.
So does that change the request? I mean, it's essentially kind of a manufacturing
It's not gonna have anything. to
type
do with
business.
What's farming?
It's far, I mean, he's selling wholesale from a farm.
Well, but I think the concept is making pies, right? And selling them to other retailers. I was under the impression this was a request for a retail operation.
Well, we've been doing that for years and we did get a permit. Your dad was on the board when I was here for the permit for 839
Yeah.
Southway Road.
I'm
I've
just
got-
asking for clarification. I'm not objecting
Well,
or,
we wholesale.
Yeah.
And
I wanna make sure everybody can hear what he's saying. So,
yeah.
do you have questions for me?
I do have one.
Okay. Thank you.
So this application, can it be amended to read?
Absolutely, absolutely.
We don't have to pick this back, we could actually amend it right now.
I listen. It's all gonna come down to what kind of conditions you put on it, and based on the hearing tonight and the conversations. I mean, obviously, things that get negotiated, things evolve, so absolutely, yeah. I try, when someone fills out an application, I'm not in there trying to change their documentation, I submit it as they apply. So, and that's what was applied, okay? Yeah, right, thanks.
More questions?
I had your, I'm sorry, your outdoors seating area, you said it's gonna be on the south side of the building, facing your home?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. And then, when I just drove through there, how far off the easement is your flagpole? Is that real close to the easement, or where is it? I don't, I saw
Well,
these white stakes in the ground.
30 foot off the road, the flagpole. But the white stakes that you saw, it was basically the edge of the porch for the building.
That's the edge of the porch, so you're gonna be taking out some of the trees around it then? Okay, that I was, because I was just thinking of with the location on the east side of, and this is just thinking out loud, east side of Elk Lake Road, the wind blows the dust towards your side of the east side of the road, you know, if the eating area would be somehow, you know, get compromised by then. I don't know, I just was like thinking about that.
Yeah, we'll have to. We'll figure out a way.
Yeah.
All right. Any questions from the gentleman? No? All right, we'll go to public comment. Maybe the gentleman that stood up a little earlier.
Yeah, my name is Leo Patch. I live at 7920 Elk Lake Road. I'm Lou's neighbor, and I'm just here to support him. He's trying to make a living out there farming. And this retail stand is a very important part of that. And most of you know how tough it is out there. I used to work in the finance business and fruit business up and down, so this really supports them. Without something like this, I mean, how many of our farmers are gonna survive out here? Especially the size that he says, so I support him.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Mike Jacobson, 7031 Steamont Point Road. I also support him. I don't know how well you guys know, but the farming industry is in rough shape these days, especially in our community. Anything you can do to help the farming community is what you should be doing. In our master plan, it talks about that. I support it. I think you should too.
Mike, if you would sign that for us, please. Sign that. Thank you. Anybody else?
Kim Angus, I want to encourage the board. I think several people would agree that paperwork may not have lined up exactly the way one would hope on this project. If the project description changes between the application and the public hearing, you need to update those things and make sure they're all lining up. But I do want to encourage the board to make every effort to find a way to approve this project and not hold them up based on some paperwork issues. If you have to revisit some things or whatever, please try to give them a clear indication. And in the future, you know, all of our labels and titles need to line up. But it's a great project, it's a great company, and it's something that's very much needed. For our community as a whole, we have to have more draws, more attractions, more positive offerings in our township for it to be sustainable and for us to keep things we love most about it. Thank you.
Is there any other comments? See anybody coming up? No raised hands? All right, moving on. Board have any other comments they want to make?
We're gonna come back to this as a business item later.
Yep. This is What's that?
Do you want a motion to close the public hearing?
Yeah, I just wanted to see where we're coming back with that. Together, on
That should be.
well, so we got listed to come back to it. Let's discuss it right after the close of the hearing. I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Oh, roll call, sorry.
Robo,
Yes.
Bozer,
Yes.
Merchant,
Yes.
Melnick,
Yes.
DeYoung,
Yes.
Stratton. Yes. Calvin, yes.
Okay, public hearing closed at 7:44. Yeah. And I will discuss it. So I'd just like to make one comment, I think that, our master plan. Very much supported our farmers, and want to support our farmers in any way possible to keep them. And, I think this falls into what we had looked for in the master plan.
We still have work to do in terms of clearing up the definitions of farm market and roadside stand, some of these terms are used interchangeably and. I think that is there, so. I'm supportive of this project as well.
Any comments?
I'm in support of it.
I'm supporting that.
What steps do we have?
I think prepare to make a formal motion.
Okay.
Consider, and that would be to approve this as a major home occupation. Pursuant to section 5.09 B. I would also, just to eliminate confusion in the future, eliminate the facts number 2 and 3. Let's discuss roadside stands and farm markets. Both of those are only tangentially related. And I would also add a requirement that there be no wholesale sales out of that building. That it's to be approved as a retail outlet.
Are you saying he can continue with wholesales from the?
Yes, just not-
He has always done it.
This building is for retail sales.
Well, if his commercial kitchen is connected to that though.
What's that?
If his commercial
Oh, it's
kitchen
commercial kitchen.
is connected to that, I mean, I feel like he's expanding to continue to bake. I'm not sure you can restrict that.
So the baking, what the commercial activity, the wholesale stuff is not happening in the existing building.
Well, he has that little market. There's a pole barn out back, I believe that's where he makes all of. And he sells wholesale out of that.
Correct, he's moving everything to the new location, correct?
So it is wholesale activity.
Yeah, it's gonna be-
In the kitchen, in the kitchen,
And cooler discreet.
I would draw that condition in.
Want us to read it?
Yeah,
So the,
that motion turned
motion
into
over to-
question actually,
Okay.
and as you think about the specific verbiage. Do you wish to include the case number SLU 2025-02 of those are true?
Yes.
Okay, good. But yeah, I. Was something more specific? That's the motion. If you need to work on it, jot it down, it's all right. Me.
To approve SLUP 2025-002. As a
It's a major
major home occupation. And removing the facts 2 and 3 from the report.
Wait, I'm sorry. Facts of 2 and 3, what did, what was
It's
it?
on page 5 of the packet.
I'm just missing the word.
You said removing.
Moving what, 2 and 3?
That.
Back then.
Back. Okay, thank you. And do you want to state what they are in the motion?
Roadside stands and farm markets are permitted uses in the zoning ordinance section 410, and farm markets require 50% products be produced or affiliated with. That's a fact, but it's not relevant to this.
Moving facts 2 and 3 regarding, okay? So third motion.
Do we need to add as a condition that they're going to be occupying the home, or is it okay because it's already listed here?
I think that's a good condition. We should, that this. To be a home occupation, it has to be a home.
Right.
I would make that a condition.
Is that part of the motion?
Yes.
I'll read this back when you.
That's good.
Give me 1 second.
Yep.
Facts 2 and 3, my page is that numbers. Thank you. Yeah, thanks. Mr. Milnick made a motion to approve case number SLUP 2025-02 Uncle Bill's Orchard as a major home occupation and remove facts 2 and 3 of the application. There's a reference point, with the condition that it be classified as a major home occupation. Or do you want the word condition in there somewhere?
No, that's not.
Oh, I did, sorry, that's not quite right, okay.
That Mr. McCauley residing at home, but that's his principal residence.
That's in the condition.
Yes.
Mr. Milnick made a motion to approve case number SLUP 2025-02 Uncle Bill's Orchard as a major home occupation and remove facts 2 and 3 of the application with the condition that this be classified. This is something that says as a major home occupation.
With the condition that Mr. McCauley
Reside
reside
in the home as his personal residence. Okay. Is there anything off or missing with
The
that?
only question I have is, if he's, doing this for his son later. We put the condition of that he has to resign on that,
That's true.
so we might want to put.
The owner of the property.
The owner of the business.
Right.
Or business.
Yeah.
Yeah, the owner of the business.
Yep, can you change that to?
Condition that the owner, business owner, resides in the home as his personal residence.
And those facts did not come from his application, they came from the zoning administrator's report.
Oh, okay, thank you. That's why I couldn't find it in this.
That's exactly why I could find it.
Okay. Okay, I will change that, removing facts 2 and 3 found in the zoning administrator's report. Unless you all want me to write facts 2 and 3 out completely so that they're in motion. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
I just want confusion about this being a roadside stand.
Right. I second the motion.
Thank you.
Roll call.
Bosler,
Yes.
Merchant.
Yes.
Melnick,
Yes.
DeYoung,
Yes.
Stratton,
Yes.
Pelton, and yes, Robel.
Yes.
Can you slow that down just a little bit?
Yeah,
Keep looking forward.
okay.
Yeah. Thank you for coming. Thank you. This helps. All right, we'll move the next on the agenda with the EAS up. We'll, that's after, we moved them up before. I'm gonna let Reen talk a little bit about this, as the chair of the last meeting. For EAS. And, can I explain where we're at right now?
Right, so, there was a lot of public input during the public, comment portion of the hearing, and, AIS was, very responsive to people's concerns, within what they're trying to do. And, they have provided, I believe they provided everybody with a firm drawing, don't we have the firm drawing? No?
No, they would have had it.
Oh. Somehow I got the firm drawing.
I think that was after the stuff.
Okay.
It was in the email then. That, that.
But there is strong public concern, from the residents in the area and those present at the meeting, about extending the industrial zone into, this, what is largely residential area. And so we left it that we thought it was an opportunity for some community building for them for AIS to meet with, the people who received the letter about the zoning request within 300 feet of the property. Which AIS, I guess, did meet with some people, but, opted not to have a formal meeting. Which is totally fine. So here we are, and we're hearing pretty much the same concerns, although there is some, it sounds like there's some flexibility in terms of giving a zoning use variance, it sounds like.
You can speak to that, thank you.
Yeah, go ahead. Because I'm not quite clear on why that's better, or why it's a better option.
Well, it was pointed out, I think, earlier today, that the zoning ordinance does provide for something called a use variance, which you don't hear about very often. It's on section page 20-2 of the zoning ordinance, section 20.07. It's, I'm gonna editorialize here just a little bit. It's kind of a relic from the past zoning practices, wherein the idea that the zoning board of appeals can grant variances, which is the normal part of zoning. Typically, that is related to dimensional standards in the zoning ordinance, the setbacks, parking, size of buildings, things are measurable. It's also interpretation in some cases, but the idea of a use variance crept into the zoning lexicon back in the day. And if you look at the Zoning Enabling Act, which was changed in 2006, it does recognize that places had this provision in their ordinance. There's an effort to discourage that, I think, because it says that a township may only use variances if it existed prior to 2006 in their ordinance, which ours does. As far as I can tell, it was in there, put in there since for a long time. I don't know how long, but I believe 2006. The other thing to mention about that is that it requires 2/3 vote of the ZBA to grant a use variance, not just a simple majority. So there's an extra hurdle to cross with that. And I will also tell you that I think most planners will discourage use variances as a means of trying to address problems, because in some cases you could consider it spot zoning. In some cases you could consider it just an exception. You're supposed to show a substantial hardship. It's hard enough sometimes to deal with variances and costs, but. So anyway, that's the story with use variances. It is technically allowed. It's probably a good idea in my mind. So I would not support that.
I don't know if this is appropriate or not, but I'm wondering if you could hear from Mr. Township about why he says that.
I would like to clarify just one thing real quick. Why specifically would you not support that? What's wrong with that?
Because I think it's a precedent that you would create wherein a use variance is always going to be a more appealing option than rezoning. Basically,
Spot zoning all over.
it's going to be a base rather than rezone property.
Point of order,
We can't.
we can't hear any.
The stuff you're saying.
Yeah, please, thank you.
Oh, no, that's good.
Oh, there we go.
Sorry, it was not.
Somebody else should probably check if it's not.
We switched points.
Yeah, I switched, and mine wasn't.
Been to 3 meetings, but somebody doesn't.
I need to go back and do that again about use variances.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So as I said, I think use variances are kind of a relic of the past from old zoning practices. The current zoning enabling act adopted in 2006 in Michigan discourages it by saying that townships and counties can only grant use variances if that provision existed prior to 2006. So there's an effort to discourage that in townships and counties particularly, and also a use variance requires 2/3 vote rather than a simple majority. So there's a much higher hurdle in order to prove a use variance. And also said that I think most planners will tell you that a use variance is not an appropriate path because it's basically writing exceptions to potentially writing exceptions to uses where you could have that occurring fairly frequently. It's hard for the ZBA to find the usual circumstances necessarily, but that's. I think it's
That would be 2/3 vote in the ZBA.
in the ZBA would have to vote 2/3 to, and I don't know what happened before. It was mentioned that was done before. I suspect 2/3 vote, or if they even paid attention to the zoning enabling act. And our ordinance does say 2/3 too, by the way. It's not just in the in the zoning enabling act. So that's where they came from.
You said you gotta or against that because
I think it sets a precedent to having exceptions to future land use where somebody wants to do something that's not permitted in the zoning district. They can appeal to the Board of Zoning Appeals for use variance, make a case, and you're essentially rezoning it. You're also taking you're also removing essentially the legislative power, I believe, of the board and the planning commission. Yes. Is that clear? I know that Katie get all wonky on zoning laws and stuff, but it is cumbersome kind of thing, and it's obviously was trying to discourage that.
Right. Oh, I mean, there are 4 things listed in terms of use variance, and number 2 is the need for the variance is due to unique circumstances, which is definitely the case here because we've got a piece of property that's zoned 3 different ways, right? But then number 4 says that the variance will not alter the essential character of the area, and that's why I'm curious why Kim and Mr. Tomzak are in support of use variance.
you'd like to ask something.
Yeah, is Mr. Tomzak still here? Yeah. Yeah.
The reason I suggest the possibility of the use variance is because, as expressed, it's unique circumstances that warrant it. You typically would try and exhaust all other measures. In this case, rezoning, if it's denied, the applicant then seeks this request through the zoning board of appeal for the purpose of doing a specific use. It is rather unique, it's done. I used to do it in the past, but it was very rare that you see a request, mostly because people don't even know it exists. don't think half of you probably on this board even know that that use variance language is in there. But it does offer the opportunity. I'm trying to be a good neighbor. I see the need for a training facility. I just don't want to see this property zoned industrial. So granting him a specific use for the property helps his cause, but it doesn't open the door for every other industrial use that's permitted, including the commercial uses. That's why I'm suggesting it. But I also understand under the R2, they can do a school, which I guess that's what this training facility is. I would want to know, does that encroach into the agricultural property if it isn't rezoned? Because parking is associated with the use. You can't just say it's the building that's going to sit on the R2 and the parking is going to sit on the agricultural. That doesn't work. Got to take the entire project into consideration. The point of all of this is, it is available for use. That might be something to consider.
So. The concern that we're hearing is this industrial use and the many, many things that can be done when it's rezoned that. Can we make the approval of our request contingent upon us using the property for which we do now? And if for some reason this company decides to leave, you just revert it back to what the zoning was before? Can we put something in there that guarantees that that's all we're gonna use it for, and it's not gonna be this laundry list of other uses that we have no intention of, nor would most people? Can we do something like that to address these concerns?
We can't put conditions on a zoning change. So the use variance would get you that. And it doesn't go with the property, right? It would be only be for their company.
I believe the use variance would run with the land.
It would run out the land, okay.
Yes, so I would also mention in terms of the future land use, we know. And as described in the current master plan, the 2025 master plan that was just adopted, that we describe the fact that we need to review the industrial development standards and uses permitted. What we have in there is antiquated. We've said that, we identified that, we talked about that. So that is coming. In fact, you're going to hear a little bit about that later tonight from our planning consultant to help us with that. So there is a need to go back into the industrial zone. We only have one. It's not uncommon to have more than one industrial zone. To go back into that zoning district and look at standards for development, setbacks, building heights, placement, landscaping, parking, all of it, together with the permitted uses that are there, because the industrial zone right now is very broad. And it was again written back in the 70s when the concerns were obnoxious land uses that you want to separate from residential. Newer industrial uses are not always as objectionable because of standards that buildings have these days. So be aware that that's coming.
Well, the current master plan in planning strategies, it says it's near build out. Regarding some level of utilization of all parcels, the building expansions, renovations, or replacements are likely in the future. Specifically talking about where we're at, that is in your master plan.
I think the question is though, the future use, I think that's what we keep hearing, the future use of the property, should it change hands? So would you be opposed to a use variance?
We just wanna have the property to run our business, because we've outgrown it. And we've outgrown it before the high school program, with the students coming. Even before that, and now that is forcing us to build some other buildings and do some other things, so. That's what we want to accomplish, and we need enough room to store our equipment on our property. And we need enough room to build the buildings that we need to build right soon. So again, I don't own the company, I work for them. They get the final say, but. We're just trying to run the business, so I think they would be agreeable to that if it allows us to do what we want to do, if that's all that you're willing to do.
So could we also discuss what we had, I think, was mentioned earlier with the idea of extending up the R2 zone further north from Chris.
Yes.
And so there was some in the last month discussion about the fact that when you first came to the planning commission, the concern was direct access to Crisp and leaving that agricultural and or R2. Subsequent conversations, you seemed open to the notion of keeping the R2 zone within 600 feet.
Well, no, it was within 295 feet, because that's what we talked about back 2.5, 3 months ago.
295.
That's what it was originally.
Area
And across both those, because again, we're zoned 3 different ways originally, but yes, on the R2. If that's what it takes to find a compromise, we would be willing to move that up to 600 feet. And squeeze our portion of industrial on that side, and I can't go really any farther than that, because we have part of our business there now that we need. But we wouldn't be willing to do that, and then on the other side to the west, that's agriculture.
Right.
That our parcel's agriculture, and it's adjoining next to it is to the west is agriculture.
So essentially what you're doing then is leaving a good portion of the land that would be south of where the school and new storage building would be still remaining R2 within
600 feet, yeah.
600 feet of Crisp Road. So that's an appealing option in my mind.
Can we get the site plan on this?
You know, I have a illustration of that, so it's just fairly recent.
Is it still, I mean, is it,
I can't put that on.
so when we're running Zoom, we don't have action.
I can't do that. We could try, but I'm afraid that's.
Yeah,
We still need to use this.
So what we're talking about, what you just talked about is 600 feet. It would be that. So if we left that as it is and moved that 600 feet now instead of 295, that's what would be rezoned to industrial. If that helps picture, if you want to look at it. That's what we just.
That's right.
Yeah, so we're pushing instead of here, which is where we talked about. We're pushing it farther now. We're pushing it up to here. This is where we're R2. This is agriculture. This is agriculture. This is R2. This is all our property. And this is R2, which is the biggest concern. This is what the people that are complaining. These people that live here support me. I've talked to them.
It's, and I think Moore Road, it's running right on the edge of this example.
Yeah, well, I mean,
Right,
over
right.
here is Grand Traverse Plastics.
Yeah, so that's
you're over Moore Road over
Yeah,
there.
it's right here.
Yeah.
So would you be willing to change this A1 to R2? Make it
No.
No?
No.
Because do you need the?
Well, why would we want to? I mean, what would be the purpose?
Well, would keep everything R2 for in that,
Well, we own the property.
yeah. I
So,
see.
yeah, no, they don't want to change that to R2. Do not believe. We can't use it for industrial, so really it'd be property they own that we wouldn't be able to use. That's what it's gonna be, no matter how it's owned.
So you think that they'll be able to use the A1 district zoning?
Yeah, I
But
think,
it's not so industrial if you left agricultural.
yeah, but they're not gonna wanna change that, they're not gonna wanna change that to R2, because it's agricultural right over here to the west.
Mhm.
And they're gonna wanna leave it.
I think that complicates it. I think if you. I mean, in my mind, this is an appealing option.
Which complicates it.
Rezone the A1 to R2.
Yeah, I do too. I don't see any reason for it.
Basically, we're not touching day one. The only thing that's changing is the R2 and the rest of it will be investment.
So what
Yeah.
what he's proposing is, it's gonna here, he wants to move something there.
Right. So we didn't.
And this is the R2 that everybody's concerned about, this is agriculture, this is agriculture, this is R2.
This is all I.
Yeah, we own it all.
Right now.
This is, yeah, from here, from, it's like here down.
So.
And this is, so here, it's R2 down. So this is where the major concern is, so we need a certain amount of property to fit all our equipment. If we were there this winter, we had equipment out, we can't fit it anywhere else, we've grown it. And so we physically need the space to run our business. And then building the classroom for the high school students that come in the fall. Which is why we need to build another building, so our storage building is being converted to back. That is right here, that is the proposed building. This is what we wanna kind of remodel and put a condition on for the classroom for the high school students. This is the building we wanna build to store things that were in here, as well as things, attachments that we have up here. We want to rack, get everything off the ground and stored in here. This is gonna have, we want to have 12-foot freestanding overhangs. Get racks and get all the attachments, everything up, rack. Here, right now, there's a lot of stuff sitting here because we moved it out of this area.
Would you be able to show us the same thing that you're talking about over there?
It's basically the same thing as what we've got here. All we're talking about is just changing, that portion.
So that's leaving basically most of the area of concern on the east side of R2. And still allowing them to do what.
Yeah, it gives us at least enough space towards the A1 that we're gonna need for equipment. And for us, when our rental fleet gets returned in the winter, from November, December, depending on weather, till March is when we have most of the equipment sitting there. Come March, April, when construction season starts, it goes back out on rent and most of it's gone. That's how we run that business.
So then just for clarification too, when a site plan does come back before the planning commission, if and when this was granted, we would be at that point talking about the specific design of the berms to still shield some of these.
Well, sure, certainly. I've already started the process, which I sent you. I've already paid the engineering firm to come out.
So this remaining A1 down here, you won't be using it for parking, it'll be just this section here.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. Yes. Yeah, you have the drawings of the berms that they drew. And I sent them to you. It was when I sent the stuff last week, a week ago. I've already done that. And again, we'll be obligated to do it. It'll be part of what you approve.
It's just that that's a separate step to get a site plan approval.
Understand.
So we're just trying to be clear.
That part's done, I think. The berm part. You know, other than location, you know, we might talk about, we put them on there. Because we don't want to take any trees down.
Yeah.
We want to leave all the trees, everything that's there, because there's some natural barriers right now, so we don't want to ruin any of that. Even the berms we build will be behind them. We don't want to take any natural barriers down there already there.
So just so I'm clear, you're putting the berms up here, not along Chris Road, but along the R2.
Well, this is really recent. So when he drew the berms out, he drew the berms where there's some tree foliage here that are really tall and you don't need them. And so it was here. It's not required on A1, and the people that actually live there would prefer I don't have berms, is what they told me, because that's where those horses are.
Yeah.
And then here.
Right in here, but if this one along Chris Road, you would to move back to this area then?
Well,
that's second.
and we
Can't hear you.
we could.
I think we're having many second conversations here. Okay.
Well, she was asking about the berms, but it's gonna be separate from this approval anyway, so
Yes, it
I don't
is.
think that we have to.
It's gonna be part of the site plan.
Right, right, so yeah, correct, but it doesn't have to do with the industrial.
Instead of coming all the way down.
Well, we need basically most of the east side R2.
When were you thinking about building, starting to build?
Tomorrow,
Tomorrow?
as soon as we can.
Well, this is closest I think we've seen so far.
So if you want, I have prepared some findings to review as well as the potential motion, but I don't want to get ahead of where you are as evaluating options too.
I guess I would just like to ask the board, do you feel at this point you can? Like it's just coming up now. Feel like you can make an educated stab at this, or do we want more time?
I bet I can take an educated stab on this. I feel like more time is not fair to anybody involved.
I would agree.
Yes, I agree.
Right, go ahead.
Again, this came up today, so I'll pass out.
Just what you.
Keep in mind, you're only making a recommendation to the township board, because they're gonna have the final say in this matter as well.
So I hear nothing about correct violation of the noise ordinance. I have a neighbor who tells me that,
All right, sir,
the bells quit going. All she hears after that is bells. They don't even quit in their brain. Believe me.
We're still in there,
They're real issue.
we're still in this stuff.
Yeah, well, a lot of discussion going on that half of us can't hear, all private between you and the potential developer, and we sit here. No participation, and we can't hear what's going on. If it's a public meeting, you gotta use your mics. I lean into that thing. I don't stand 3 foot back.
Yes, sir, okay.
On the
Good
desk,
point.
I'm sorry.
Thank you. Try to make sure we talk directly in the mics.
Hold the mics forward so they're usable.
Yeah.
There you go. It's 3 feet in front of you.
And you saw in my letters, Steve, that in over 25 years I've worked there, we've never had a complaint from noise, ever.
Yeah, well, you are now.
Sir, we'll have to ask you to keep your comments to yourself at this point, okay? Thank you.
I'm sorry. But all this goes on between you and him, and the rest of us are left out. As I said at the last meeting, I would not consider denying this request based on the noise. Because that has never been a complaint until now. Wow. And you weren't,
Okay, Carl, we're not gonna discuss this point here now, okay?
Yeah.
We're working on what Randy's gonna be talking about here, okay?
So it is obviously up for the planning commission to consider findings, first being that the proposed rezoning is not inconsistent with the 2025 master plan. Specifically, this planning strategy for this area includes 3 points: to review permitted uses and development standards, to review the boundaries of the ag district, and specifically expressing the policy of discouraging truck access to Crisp Road, which is unpaved. To reduce potential impacts on neighboring property, the applicant has amended the rezoning application to limit the expansion of the industrial district such that the agriculturally zoned area remains unchanged to a point that is 290 feet north of Crisp Road and parallel thereto. And the residentially zoned R2 area remains unchanged to a point that is 600 feet north of Crisp Road and parallel thereto. Third, the planning commission will soon be undertaking a review of permitted uses and development standards in the zoning district boundaries of the N1 district as part of the work about to begin with its planning and zoning. Fourth, is encouraging economic opportunities, preserving rural character, the 2 planning principles in the master plan. The proposed rezoning results in community investment that helps anchor the major local employer in Whitewater Township with additional facilities and by providing new training and educational opportunities. Further, residents have indicated that heavy equipment use and repair are greatly linked to various agricultural operations. 5, the applicant has demonstrated a willingness to install berms and take other measures to reduce noise and light spillover if and when a site plan is provided to the foot of proposed improvements. And 6, the township board and planning commission are required to review proposed zoning amendments in the context of section 2105.
the zoning ordinance and points to need to consider standards in the master plan, consistency, zoning ordinance, intent and purpose, road safety, efficiency, utility, screening conditions, potential exclusionary issues and site conditions. So a potential motion is to rezone parcel 13-004-015-21 to N1 industrial, except that the southern portion of this parcel remains agricultural within 290 feet of Frisk Road and parallel thereto, and the southern portion of this parcel shall remain zone R2 within 600 feet of Frisk Road and parallel thereto. The applicant shall provide an updated survey and legal description per section 2103A of the zoning ordinance. And then also parcel 13-04010-10 is also rezoned such that the entire parcel is zoned N1. That's the parcel that actually fronts on M72. And if you look at the existing zoning map, there's a small sliver of land that's going to, I think, with a surveying which.
About this, in. Item 3, that will soon be undertaken review of proposed uses. That's not gonna be retroactive, right? I mean, it's only going to pertain to,
That's correct.
yeah.
But I think it's pointed out there because we recognize that there are major flaws in the industrial zone, some in terms of uses and development standards. That updating that district will greatly improve what can happen in the N1 district.
And so if the property were to change hands. After the changes have been made to the.
Oh, yeah, then those new standards apply.
Thanks.
That might indicate a sense of urgency with that issue. There's identify priorities.
Something else than the last.
Yeah.
Anybody else have any questions for the evening? Everybody understand that? Did you hear what he read? No.
We couldn't hear it when you were discussing it earlier.
Did you hear what he read?
No.
I did 100%.
Yeah, you can. Here, try it. You can pass around.
Earl?
I think this is a good idea. I think there's been a very, I agree. I'm just wondering down the road. I recall some other areas, they have light industrial districts and heavy industrial. Ours would seem to be a light industrial, but it's very small. I think down the road, we ought to be looking at that. Yeah, I disagree with that, Carl, at all. We have one industrial district, as I said earlier, is typically often two. One for heavy and one for lighter industrial. And we don't distinguish,
Any other question?
This is a recommendation, so I cannot put a condition on the recommendation or anything like that. Is that correct?
you can't.
Yeah.
Well,
Don't agree with something in there.
well, I agree with it. I'm just interested, I know it's a site plan and he's agreed to berm the area, but I'd like the berms to match the A1, R2 lines that he's going with. And not bring it all the way down to Brisk Road, just put him the sound barrier closer to the boundaries that he's exhibiting.
Wouldn't that be something we'd look at with the site plan?
That's what I was wondering. That goes to the board.
Well, if the rezoning is approved, then later they would produce a site plan that would come to just the planning commission.
Okay, so you come back with. That's what I need to.
Well, your thoughts? Think we're gonna.
Well, I'll make the potential motion here, as a start, and with those findings.
You wanna read the motion again out loud?
Rezone parcel 13-004-015-21 to N1 industrial, except that the southern portion of this parcel remains zone A1 agricultural within 290 feet of Cliff Road and parallel thereto. And the southern portion of this parcel remains zone R2 within 600 feet of Cliff Road and parallel thereto. It's the same parcel, the zoning line splits it. This is another problem with split zoning that we have so many of. The applicant shall provide an updated survey that's required by the zoning ordinance. We provided a survey before, but it's changing now, so we would need to have that changed. And parcel is 13-004-10-10 is also rezoned such that the entire parcel is zoned. I say 90% of it, so and one, but it will be on two.
There's a motion.
Second.
You have a second? What?
Second, Merchant.
Call? Tony?
Okay, Burgess. Yes, Milnick,
Yes.
DeYoung,
Yes.
Stratton,
Yes.
Pelton, yes, Robel,
Yes.
Beaufort.
Yes.
Okay, okay.
Can I ask a question about that motion?
You have a copy of this?
No, that's my question, Randy.
Yes, I-
Randy? I didn't get a copy of that yet, I'm gonna get one before the end of the meeting. But you guys could include a set for me as well would be great. My question is, did what you read in your motion, was it verbatim to this or had you
Yes.
changed it with anything? Okay, thank you.
Okay. Yes, we are. There's the left. No, here, you ready? Just. Bring up the fact that, we got a. Application for a. Maybe you could explain it.
A proposed zoning text amendment was proposed by Rachel Steelman, was in the prior packet. I don't think it's in this packet. But it was proposed in the part one with some explanation of that. We didn't get to discuss it at the last meeting because we went to them talk. Right?
Yes, 11.
And so this is all related, of course, to the LS and the whole largely complicated issues of short-term rentals. It is a text amendment, and as I said, a short resident can propose a text amendment, just like they're proposing a map amendment that we just witnessed.
Now, we're in the process of, developing the ROS committee. And we'll be talking about that in just a little bit. And, what exactly that will be. And one of the things they are taking up is the short-term rentals. So, we definitely want to use this in our, research for short-term rentals. What is our obligation as far as this amendment request?
The obligation is to consider it, but there is no timetable on, there's nothing in the planning enabling act or the zoning enabling act that says that we have to act on it within a certain period of time. Doesn't say anything about a specific. We can go ahead and do what we've done and have scheduled a public hearing on what was submitted, exactly what was submitted. That's an option.
I would like to suggest, that we take this and goes to the RLS as part of their, research. To bring, keep board what short-term rental. Ordinance we look like. Is anybody against that?
Yeah, I guess in my mind, the only thing that I go back to is that we don't really know yet what resident concerns are about short-term rentals. We haven't really identified specifically the concerns and thoughts on how to control it or not control it. Everybody points back to the master plan survey that 1/3, 1/3, 1/3, we've heard that 100 times. That's true, but where does that put us as far as if there are regulations? Is it township wide? Is it zoning district based? Is it lot size based? Is there a licensing component to short-term rentals? I don't know. There's a lot to explore here, and that's what is an issue, and that's why it's not a simple 1 or 2 meeting thing with the planning commission. And as you look at other towns, you see them dealing with it over and over again.
We don't want to make any mistakes, so we want to make sure we know everything. I do believe too, in the master plan, that wasn't exactly a specific topic. The master plan was mostly under comments, so we don't know if we.
There was one question about how do you feel about short-term rental, right?
On the survey.
One question among 25. You know, it wasn't a survey about that, and I think some people have said that we should be looking at the survey specifically for the rental. Dig into the issue a bit more and find out. Okay.
So we don't have to, or do we have to have a public hearing and go through the whole process, or?
Only if we're gonna push this forward, and it's ready, and we don't know that.
Well, or we could recommend to not, to deny it, right? Because on the grounds that we are still planning to do research.
I don't think we have to deny it, I think we just have to use that. We're still researching, so we're gonna take what Rachel wrote. And we're gonna put that with everything else that we have and what we get.
I think we're saying we're gonna table this specific.
Sounds like we're taking,
amendment.
yeah. Because I thought we had to at some point vote on.
Well, we have to address it one way or the other, I believe, but. You know, obviously the discussion about putting the short-term rental for the ROS that goes back. I don't know, not like we just decided that as the amendment came in, that's been discussed. We'll discuss it at the town board meeting in February. Not specifically doing, asking the planning commission to create the ROS, do its due diligence on short-term rental, come back with a recommendation.
So I'm just trying to understand the process. So the ROS does the research, comes back to the planning commission. With that information and then the planning commission would then vote on that ordinance on whether we're.
Or with changes to it, or modify that ordinance, or take pieces of that ordinance, want to do something else. I don't know, I mean, I don't have preconceived ideas about what it should be or shouldn't be.
I guess it's just that it's gonna be an open item, right? Until
Yes.
we have a plan. Okay.
Do we have to do anything official, like table it while under research, or can we just move that right on over to our ROS committee?
I think it should be referred to the ROS committee to consider.
Okay, and so we don't need a motion or anything.
I think this is good.
Yeah,
I think I'll make a motion at this point that we take that application. Rachel's given and refer that to the ROS committee. Okay, all right. Refer that to the ROS committee for further research and development on this subject.
Second, Lord.
Is that a roll call vote or?
Yeah.
No, all in favor?
I.
Any opposed? Carried. Okay. All right, move on to approval of minutes of previous regular meeting.
Can I mention something about that?
Yes.
Because I already had my set copied, or printed. I was going through my packet I just noticed this evening that in the packet on the website, April 2nd minutes were in the actual packet, not the May 7th, unless I totally overlooking something. Any of you looked at May 7 minutes? My packet?
No.
I thought the date was just incorrect.
Let's say April 2nd.
Right.
It's just the date.
It's just the date that's
Yeah.
incorrect.
So date that's incorrect, because yeah, it is, it is that last meeting. There was here.
And we discussed the ROS.
Well, that would be wonderful.
Yeah,
It was a lengthy meeting.
Yeah, it's just the date that's wrong.
Yep.
Okay,
No,
I
it's-
was looking on the online site, so that's great news.
So that's our first change.
yeah.
I'm just gonna ask Tim this because I'm not sure if this is what you're talking about. Was it in these minutes that you said that was mentioned? You said something earlier?
Yeah,
Something?
I'll apologize, I misread it, it said I don't disagree.
Oh,
The double negative.
That way,
all right.
and I'm trying to figure out what.
I'll try to be more straightforward this time.
I want to debate on how you believe that, so, okay, good.
All right, I just want to make sure, because
No, you're good.
remember you saying something about that.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, is there any other comments, corrections, or?
Yes, I believe it's on page 5, written comments received. Vice Chair Peltman indicated she received correspondence that would have been Stratton, Vice Chair Stratton. Page 5 of the
Right
minutes.
under,
Where is it?
I'm sorry.
Did you see it? It's under it's on page 33 of the packet. The purpose of the public hearing and then the next section. Down,
Under the written comments received.
yes. Vice Chair Stratton.
Oh, was it Stratton?
Yes.
Okay, I'm sorry for that.
No, that's okay. It just proves I read the minutes.
Oh, and then it says it again. That
Yes,
that you read aloud the letters of
Yes.
support, and that was me.
yeah,
Okay.
both locations.
Direct me to that location.
Mhm.
Sorry,
Where's that?
where's that?
2 lines down,
Swing Waits down.
or, yeah. Ms. Belton and also read aloud letters of support, that should be Stratton.
Okay, they should both be Stratton, thank you.
Okay.
Reading through this, but is it?
What I was going to recommend that I just figured this out, if I go ahead during and I read the minutes and I do a find for my name, everything that's attributed to me, if it's incorrect, I know right away, but I have no idea what you guys said. Just,
Is there anything else on the minutes? No? Entertain a motion?
I'll make a motion to accept the minutes as amended from the May 7th meeting.
Is there a second?
Pelton second. Roll call.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Carried, okay. All right. Under correspondence, there was 2, of course, we talked about earlier. Okay, the reports, zoning administrator.
Oh.
Back to the normal stuff. Zoning administrator report, seven new permits, I've probably got 6 new ones. Again, I've got another land use or a land division that's come in, Uncle Bill's ordered with it tonight. I've gotten a few more complaints regarding short-term rental. I got a complaint about scrap iron being stored in a pile. The hot tub on Elk Lake Road to remove, woo! And yeah, so that's kind of the highlights. So no ZBA appeals that are on the forefront at this time. And Dawn's on vacation until next week. So yeah, I've got several different things pending. A lot of accessory structures going in, a lot of new builds. So, anyone have any questions about my report?
Does the pace of development continue to increase here?
Pardon me?
Does the pace of development continue to increase?
Yes, I've gotten a couple calls. There's a possible commercial development. There's someone looking at property along next to Ginup. I don't know if you remember Chris Wood. He came in with a Bay Area disposal. He was he's still wanting to be in our community. Came up at the board level as well. He does a lot of rehab, you know, kind of like a restore where they have, you know, 100 windows or doors, or say he's got 300 pews in a warehouse somewhere, but he's got thousands of square feet of miscellaneous stuff. There's a place called Odums that used to exist in Traverse City.
Yes.
And so he's thinking of something similar to that. That might be a commercial space that he would construct. Kind of run his rehab, but run it as a commercial space / you know, that his disposal. So he's kind of entertaining that. I think he's looking at some property along the M72 corridor. Oh, hey, I got trees planted at John Deere at Hudson's. They planted trees along our corridor in case you notice how lovely it looks. Oh, we have that tree line corridor. And I did go and talk to Ginups about maybe planting some trees, because when the planning commission approved Ginups, they never mentioned trees or the corridor overlay. So I've been in talking to them, obviously, with the fact that we don't have any. Without suing somebody, we really can't get anything accomplished in the township, so I have to just be nice, and so I'm going in, talking to people and seeing if we can get compliance. A comment was made at last month's meeting that I was picking on some guy that had wood on his property, and I just wanted to clarify for the board. I came up with the board meeting. I have somebody that's renting a property, and it's a pretty good sized one, but he hauls in trees and cuts up, does firewood, doesn't have a home-based business for firewood, doesn't burn firewood on the site, doesn't stack it neatly, he just kind of leaves all the scrub, and the neighbors are kind of sick of looking at it. So, it's something I'm working on, and I've talked to him a couple times, but you know, it's probably gonna escalate a little bit. But it's not like he's got a pile of wood there waiting to be burned this winter. He's just creating an unsightly mess for his neighbors to stare at, and hopefully if he'll cooperate, we can bring him into compliance as well. Obviously, we've got some nuisance areas that need to be clarified, and hopefully the board will proceed with a civil infraction policy that'll eliminate us having to get the attorneys involved in every single little thing that we do that gets us to enforce the ordinances on the books, which is what my job is. Okay.
I have a question. There are, I believe, 2 homes being built at Elk Lake Road and Angel Road. On
the north side, they're behind Roberto.
Pardon?
Behind Roberto.
Yeah.
Yep.
And just are they on? Are they've been sold off as separate lots?
Nope. Mr. Hayden's building them himself.
Yeah.
He's building them. The owner of the property is building those homes.
Okay, but he isn't. I know that they require a 1 acre lot for homes.
Actually 40,000 square feet in ag.
Okay.
He split those off a year and a half ago. He's divided up those.
And he can build additional homes.
Yeah. He put a road in, it's called Kestrel Lane. It's a new lane that was put in. Since we don't have a private road ordinance anymore, it's gated there.
2 homes, so that would be a driveway, everything.
Well, there's possibly potential for 3 more.
Yeah, I know.
think, down there, so it'll be a
And,
priority.
this is exactly what I've been telling the planning commission for 5 years was going to be happening because of that ordinance. So it's happened.
Any other questions?
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
It's.
All right, just a discussion of the joint meeting a little bit. Most of it's all gonna entail the ROS. So I'm gonna push that on off. Does anybody else want to mention anything about the joint meeting other than what we're gonna discuss with the ROS?
The other topics like the CIP and road ordinance.
That will be in the ROS.
That'd be the ROS, okay.
Okay, Randy, you have anything?
No,
Okay, Denise?
No.
Randy?
No, I just thought the joint meeting was a really good. Community, on the same page with the topic, and it was very helpful. It was 2 hours, very productive. Not bad.
Okay, Carl, do you have anything? ZBA?
No, they have no meetings.
All right. All right, unfinished business. I want to bring up the wineries and tasting room ordinance direction. I'd like to see us move ahead with this, not tonight. I'd like us to take a really good hard look at this in the next month. I'd like to come back next month and maybe have something that we can bring forward.
Just had a question about, there's something in the packet and then with another follow-up email.
I think there is what.
So the one in the packet was old, I messed up with my email, so the one that I emailed you guys is the newest, most updated one, I feel like kind of addresses every article that I had to address in the numbers, because the original one, everything got renumbered. So this one matches up with the booklet now, much easier to understand, a little more detailed from what I researched for.
Is there anything anybody would like to see before we look at that next month? I mean, obviously, we're gonna have a very good draft to look at, but.
I'd like to see the regulations from the liquor commission, because part of it is, it would be included or considered on-site and off-site. Locations for tasting rooms or things like that.
Well,
Unless,
that's all regulated, like the township level can't regulate that, that's all regulated by MLCC.
so,
So you can't,
well, that's, I guess the definitions, because there's, the tasting room is like, you have to have over. As I understood it, over 50% of the product produced on your farm. To
the
like
definitions that who defines.
the commission, so,
Right, so they'll like,
I'm thinking of Town Line Cidery, they produce, they have the apples and they produce.
right, but that. I guess I'm confused, if that 50% that you're talking about, that's regulated by the MLCC to town line. That's who they deal with, does that make sense? Like, it's not the township that comes in and looks at that, it's the
Yeah.
MLCC that says.
Yeah.
Yes, you can do this.
Yeah, but I don't know if everybody knows that. Or part of the liquor licensing and things like that.
Well, it is complicated, sure,
Yeah.
the connection between what the township can do and what the different position does.
So this came up before the first meeting that was on the commission. Can I get a quick summary here of what we're actually doing with this?
Yeah.
Well, this is, following our master plan, you wanna help the farmers. Do what they can to keep their farms. And here has come up where they would like to have a tasting room in their already approved, yeah, it's a major home occupancy.
Well, major home occupancy, but
Right,
farm
right.
market,
Yeah.
yeah. We basically went around the same thing on the bill.
Yeah, so this is an ordinance that we're going to be looking at or
it would be a permitted use.
submitted here?
There's no ordinance written for wineries
Yeah.
in our township, so we're working on that.
Okay,
And we're basically just looking at farmers that already have the property and then produce it themselves. Do it at their own property, correct? Can I say that right?
So we're looking at making a winery. Cider house ordinance, which they go hand in hand, wine and cider, if you read the
right,
definition.
right.
So we're looking at creating an ordinance for that. And obviously, I own a business that wants to do this, so I have to recuse myself from the ultimate vote. But then if say we make this ordinance, then Myrtle and Mods would have to come in for another special use permit to have our permit that we already have altered, amended.
Yeah, so this is for the whole township.
For everybody.
Put something in place
Yeah.
here, okay.
So there's guidelines on how to require.
Exactly.
I understand, operate, where it can operate, how big it can be, all that.
I did attempt to look up some other township ordinances and couldn't really find anything, but there has to be one.
I did send some when we originally talked about this. I can send them again. I think we did. Yeah, David didn't have them all. Yeah, I can resend those ordinance. I think I did like 4 or 5 local townships in our area that are like close to what we have going on and what their ordinance are.
And that was in your previous letter?
That was probably 2 or 3 meetings ago.
Would you mind?
Yeah, it was
Would you
before I
mind sending those?
Yeah, I'll resend that.
Would like to ask Deb a question. Did you get a chance to look at this, Deb?
Yeah, a little bit.
Any comments on
I think it's kind of laid out. I mean, we need to, have it defined in our definitions. Just like everything in our Article 4 of our use regulations, where it's permitted, where it's not permitted. I know we're looking at it, doing it in ag, but would we want to consider doing it in commercial? Would we want to consider doing it in the village? Because if we ever develop our village one day, someday, it might be something that we would want to consider it to be a special use there. It might attract, development in that respect. So be it part of Article 4. I agree that it should be a special use permit and require a site plan review before the planning commission. So I don't think I'd want it to be a set permitted use, but permitted by special use. And I haven't dealt with any other townships that really have a lot of it. I know Milton Township has a winery, cidery there at Water Fire, I think.
Yes.
And then Elk Rapids Township has it with the Town Line Cider. Central Lake doesn't have any zoning outside in the township, so they're kind of freewheeling. But I know Leelanau Peninsula, they've got several wineries over there too. So there's a lot of information. Peninsula Township probably's got some. Well, it's
5 years of litigation.
yeah, well, there's a lot of information out there. It just depends on how far reaching you want it to be and how restrictive you want it to be. Or if you put the basic outline out there and then you put your own conditions on it. So, I don't, as a zoning person, I don't really get involved with like liquor control. When I worked at Torch Lake, we actually had a liquor control person that took care of, where licenses are, and what's going on with that. So, and I don't know if we even have one.
Yeah, there's one, he lives in River City actually,
Okay.
that does purple area.
So I don't know how that whole thing works, but that would be kind of outside, and you may even want it to be a board, approval too. Just like when High Point Golf Course came in and wanted a liquor license out there. Obviously this isn't gonna be hard liquor because it would be wine, but it may be something that, you would want the township board to be involved with and approve as well. I don't know if you wanna go to that extreme, but. Those are my thoughts about it.
Thank you. Any questions for Deb?
Yeah. Oh, sorry, not for Deb.
Okay.
Thank you, Deb.
Sadie, in Article 13.17 E.2 A. The parcel area is at least acres. And then E, the winery shall have a minimum of 50 planted acres of crops.
So those 2 areas, I put that question mark,
Yeah.
because I think that's something we can discuss, is how small people are comfortable with a farm doing this. Like, do you want it to people that own a 10-acre farm, or do you want it to be substantial in our township?
And how does, going back to Denise's question about the. And maybe I'm not understanding this, but about the liquor and versus, like how much you're producing yourself.
Yeah.
We need to make sure that we're not creating something that's, we need to make sure that we're in agreement with what the liquor license requirements are, right? You think, I mean,
Yeah, that's where the rub is with
Right.
Peninsula Township and. Over there is where the good control starts and the township begins. And
Yeah.
So that's.
I can try to get that more defined. I can talk to the guy from Travers that, from the MLCC and talk to him directly and see. Also with the parcel, the parcel of at least how many acres. The question too with that, especially in our township, is a lot of farms are not on one parcel, they're broken up. So like, for example, our farm specifically, we own about 350 acres, but they're not on one parcel. So if the winery, if this is saying specifically on the parcel, the winery is 100 acres, well. It's not going to be, most farms in our area are really broken up. If you know, like, most farms that are huge anyway, like Dean's, Delicates, like they're. So we have to kind of figure out how, if it has to be, if we wanna word that more like. The farm itself owns this many acres, or what you're comfortable with. So, does that make sense? That's why I kind of was like, well, I pulled that from another township, but I'm like, that's kind of tricky.
right, and I was wondering if B would end up informing A,
Yeah,
if, you know, if there's a certain percentage that needs to be. Okay,
I think I like the idea of the total acreage on a farm now, just.
Yeah.
Like a lot
Oh,
of
for
land,
sure, yeah.
50 acres, so
Contiguous parcels and are.
what size would we be talking?
Well, Peninsula has 50 acres, it is the size of their acreage. Their winery.
That's enough to produce wine,
Oh.
50 acres, okay. So 50 acres total acreage.
Okay.
Farm, that sound all right? Question I had too, if we just listed in here that must follow the LCC regulations, does that cover us with everything and?
There are a lot of nuances in that, I think we're gonna need to rely on our attorney to help us with that, and with litigating. This was.
Right.
oh, yeah,
I agree with you though, because those are dynamic, those are gonna be changing all the time, so I think
Yeah.
maybe it's.
And you don't wanna, be careful about where you can regulate what they regulate.
Right.
That's where, and also that same case is being argued in for Napa Valley, I guess, in California, the same attorneys. So this is not only a local Michigan issue, it's a national one.
So can we say in here as a caveat, just saying that, must follow the MLCC rules or laws, and what applies to, trying to pull this in my head. Rules that apply. From those regulations are not controlled by township laws.
Yes, but we
If they
can
can
define what those
oversee-
are, so we know that we're
Right.
not. infringing on that.
So under 5.13A. It says the winery is licensed by the U.S. Treasury Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco and Firearms and the Michigan Liquor Control Commission. So if they're already licensed by them, that means that they're following their rules, doesn't it?
Right, I'm not sure what the problem is with the township, the other townships that are in litigation over this. But it has something to do with the two.
I'm just wondering if that does what you're saying. You know, by saying that they have to be licensed,
Well, I think it says and is in compliance.
Right.
So I think that really covers it.
I think what he's saying more is township trying to force rules that are ruled by
Right.
LCC, not the township doesn't oversee their rules,
Right.
so
we're not
I
gonna sue.
think that's where Randy says we need to
Yeah,
be
so
careful.
here's an example in Peninsula, I know about that birthday, and the Peninsula had a requirement that. The winery has to use grapes produced on Old Mission Peninsula. As I understand it, I'm a little rusty on this, but as I understand it, there was a question about that infringing on interstate commerce and a constitutional issue. And so that's being litigated as to whether or not a township can say that your winery can only use grapes from Old Mission Peninsula. So it's things like that that are kind of nuanced which we need to be aware of in terms of what we're.
And perhaps you lose your grapes for a season because of frost or something, Are you totally out of business or keep paying for somewhere else?
You know, ironically, some of the winery ordinances on Peninsula Township were written by the wineries themselves. So, there's a long story there, right? So,
It would seem like legal guidance would be good here.
yeah, I don't think it's overwhelming, we just.
Yeah.
Stay in our mind.
It's not meant, I'm having a hard time seeing it because we. Do you have the issue of noise mentioned in there at all?
It does, like it says, I thought it was in there that. It goes along with following the rest of the township's rules and regulations, it's just what we have to. Follow, yeah.
Yeah, the use of property are compliant with the ordinances and townships.
Yeah.
The township ordinances and applicable current terms county and state of Michigan.
So, one of the businesses that had this, I think it's Kambayu, they, and other, it's in, I think by Petoskey, but they are not allowed any outdoor music. They have to have the indoor music, but not outdoor, because when I traveled, I don't think they thought about this, but in the city, there was a hotel that on the rooftop, they played music for their penthouse bar. And you could hear the music miles away because of the location, it was 50 stories up. So, so, but you gotta think about things like that, about noise,
Correct me if I'm wrong, but don't they still have to come for especially to change your special use permit?
Trying to
Once it's
amend it.
amend it?
That's,
So there's still another step before
yeah,
that happens. All we're saying is that this is a use that you could use it for, right?
but yeah, and even right now, like our hours, all of that was regulated by. That special use permit, and we had to follow the noise then as well.
Yeah.
So,
So one other point I'll make about that is that the issue in Peninsula has been that of events. And having large events, and so wineries typically have their events outside. So there's not a building, when there's a building, you know what the occupancy of the building is, you know, whatever number the fire chief puts on it. When you have outdoor events, there's no space that confines it, so. In Peninsula, their old ordinance trying to regulate it by types of events rather than numbers of people. So I think we'll need to dig into the issue of events and music and things like that, so that and parking and do you really want paid parking for, you know. I'm not sure you want that in all cases in agricultural areas. Well, there's issues to dig into that with that too.
Okay.
What?
I think it's a great start though.
I appreciate what you do. Just didn't want to sit anymore after we need to move this forward, so let's try to do as much research we can on this month. If you could get another draft out before. Somebody can take a look at it and we'll talk back and forth and bring it to the next meeting and.
Can we talk, I thought we were gonna have a discussion at.
No, I meant not talk back and forth on
Oh,
the thing about this, what if you had other items you wanted to list on it.
Oh.
Rather
Questions.
the questions, okay.
so specifically, the things that would need to be addressed, because obviously the ultimate goal is to keep this moving, which would be, the next step is a public hearing, correct? Once we,
Yep.
and then it has to go to the board, so it's not like it's got several steps and several amendments to do, just from the basics of what we're doing, but, so some CC regulations I can bring to better understand where the divide is, that we can roughly understand, because it's gray, and some townships are fighting that. I'll resend a local ordinance that I have found, which I had Milton Township, Elk Rapids. I had a couple other ones I had to find, I think they're at home, but. And then for Article 4, how Deb had talked about, do we all feel like, I here only put it in the ag, but that it should be included in commercial in the village?
So that's a remote winery, a remote wine
I mean,
tasting area kind of thing.
ultimately, yeah, you're giving the permission to. Have it'd have to, I guess they'd have to own the farm in the township. But with the master plan, I guess it goes along with that. But we took a no, so, because it's all about formatting it, because it would go under.
I don't know, I think almost at this point, I like the way it's written,
Just for everybody.
on-site tasting rooms, and one districts. You know, if we get to the point where we start getting a bunch of these and then we wanna look into, you know, who knows if we're gonna have a little village or what's gonna happen next. I think that could just muddy the waters a little bit.
Okay.
That makes sense. Fair.
Keep it as ag, okay,
Give us a-
okay, keep it simple,
Yeah.
try to keep it simple, otherwise we're gonna end up like this.
Right.
Okay, and then. It's be permitted by special use permit, which is how we have it written. Article 13(2)A, we'll do the 15 acres total. I'll try to clear that part up. And then as far as events, I'll try and look at some other townships and what their event restrictions are. Or how they worded that. But again, like the parking, noise, all of that is in the regular township zoning that we have to follow anyways, so I'm not sure that we have to get that specific. Especially when whoever's applying for this has to come back for a special use permit, does that make sense?
It can be added as a condition, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it can be, and then, you know, the issue with the events, that was one of the sticking points you put in, so where some of the wineries were having. The winery didn't really like some of the big events, they were, like the Bridezilla parties and whatever else, you go out on a party bus and. They don't buy wine typically, they just drink.
Well, we don't allow event gardens, right? No. So maybe we do wanna have something in here about events.
Well, something to consider, I mean, it's not
Yeah.
decided tonight, but I guess. It's natural that a winery would be sitting in events.
And I think I have to look back on our. Original application too, because I think that there was something about so many events. I'll look back on it, but okay, I'll work on that part of it as well.
Right, as I recall, there was, particularly in the winter. Months, something like, maybe sewing or quilting or things like that, I think was mentioned, that was a long time ago.
But yeah, like I said about as far as the noise and the hours, the parking, that seems like it's individual basis. With the special use, correct?
Somebody want to add to this, Mike?
I believe you do allow event barns, there's an event barn on Cedar Mountain Point Road at Samuel's Farm, that they have events there regularly throughout the year. So if you don't allow it there, it should be allowed in other places.
Thank you. Where is that at?
On Cedar Mountain Point Road, about halfway down on the right hand side, it's a
Historic farm.
historic farm, just they open up to the public.
That's not the use permit?
No,
No,
it's zoning administrator can give out an event permit, it's in the zoning ordinance.
Okay.
I think it's under special uses, article 5.
Yeah,
It's in a book there next to you.
Yeah, it's the whole sort of thing.
Yeah.
Yes, it's a book. Thank you.
It was a great raceway that did a special event when we did that.
Okay.
And drives.
do that,
All right.
too.
We're good to move on then, that's your marching orders.
Okay, I'll work on this in
And
hopes
then-
that we can.
The hope is that we can come up with something that maybe we can send to the attorney. And then with his approval, we'll have public hearing. Okay. All right. Then let's move on. Okay, the ROS. First, I'll let Reen talk about her, we did talk about giving, an ad or something, if they're asking for help. Reen came up with something that, kind of agreed with, so.
I emailed it, I did not email it to Kate, what is your email? Yeah, just, because I don't have a printed copy, I don't have a printed, hold on just a second.
I don't believe I saw the ad, is it in an email or?
She just sent it at the beginning of the
top
meeting.
Oh,
And she can read it out loud, here, so we can all hear it.
I'll go into you in a minute. Okay. Resident Outreach Subcommittee job description. The Whitewater Township Planning Commission is looking for residents to fill 5 to 7 positions on the Resident Outreach Subcommittee, also called the ROS. The ROS is a long-term research and data collection committee that reports to the Planning Commission. Several topics will be researched pertaining to township planning and zoning. Initial topics will be the capital improvement plan and short-term rentals. Interested candidates should have experience researching topics, collecting and interpreting data, and leading workshop discussions with the public. The ROS will meet in person at the Township Hall once or twice a month for approximately 12 months, including public workshops. If you are a community-minded Whitewater resident and would like to apply, please complete and return the application available at the Township Hall by June 25th, 2025. This is based on the conversation at the joint meeting. In terms of the description of the type of experience we would like the candidates to have. And the June 25th is based on the hope that the Planning Commission can review candidates at the July meeting. I've since received an email from Tim Aaron about the pay schedule. So I guess that's something that I could add to this.
So members are paid to participate.
Yes, yeah. He said the chair is paid $120 per meeting. The ROS member, who is also a planning commission member, but not the chair, is paid $95 per meeting, and other ROS members from the public are paid $75 per meeting. So I would probably just include the $75 at this point, I think.
yeah. Yeah. I'm not quite sure how much this ad would cost because it's charged by the word, I believe.
Yeah, so one of the places it was gonna show up was on the township website. And then, yes, I can probably edit it to some extent for the Elk Rapids.
Yeah, and I'm not certain, but the Elk Rapids has the chamber news flash or whatever, the Monday morning bulletin or something.
Oh, yeah, that was from the chamber. There's a newsletter every week from the chamber.
Elk Rapids. Is anyone a member that?
I am.
Could you put something on that?
Yep, I can give it to.
That'd be great.
Give it to them.
One of the things that were mentioned was, clerk was gonna send out. Posted on the Elk Rapids News. On their web, they could post it, they post it on the web. Okay, Rapids News. These are just things that were brought up at the joint meeting. Back on the tax bill, but I think.
It's gonna come out. Again.
Too late.
Although, we might wanna put on the back of the tax bill. We're just continuing, because some people will be able to stay on and it might need more people. It might not hurt to do that still. And then the Mill Creek News Online is listed too.
I can send it to them if you want me to.
Well, that'd be great.
I'll amend this, and send it out again, so that you have an electronic copy of it. A couple of the points that I was trying to make clear is that the ROS will not be writing the short-term rental ordinance that will be coming from the Planning Commission based on the data and research that the ROS provides. And also that it's a long-term commitment and that we will be looking at other topics, not just the STRs, because I believe the 100% of the interest that we've received so far in terms of emails and letters and things or people standing up at meetings has been based on the short-term rentals. So, if anybody feels like that's not clear enough, let me know.
I was asking you to consider doing ROSs at the same time. Maybe have different people on the commission be the chair for different ROSs based upon their personal experience or interest. And I personally don't have any experience in capital improvements, budgeting. Somebody else might, but the ROS is, a lot of people have experience with ROS in terms of the short-term rentals because you've stayed in or you haven't, but the CIP is kind of a specialized area. And the road ordinance, you mentioned that wouldn't take,
Just trying to follow what you said.
yeah, that
I
having,
didn't quite understand what you're saying about the
Having-
multiple chairs.
yeah, yeah.
Well, yeah, there's no reason why I have to stay the chair the entire time. So for instance, if David wanted to take over for capital improvements, he would become the chair and I would just be an ROS member who's also a planning commission member.
Yes,
So that's not a problem.
so, but, would you consider doing 3 ROSs at one time? Short-term rentals, the CIP, which is completely different. And then, road ordinance.
I personally would not. There's no way to manage 3 separate committees when I think that can be all done in one.
I thought that's what we talked about at that meeting, that we weren't gonna, we were gonna do like a revolving door, like if people dropped out, then we'd accept more people back in
Yeah.
and keep those
We're definitely
applications,
gonna-
right?
Yeah, we're definitely gonna have attrition, so.
That's what we kind of talked about,
Yeah.
didn't we?
But it's still
So I understand.
one committee, but the membership may change.
Yeah. I understand that, but I'm wondering, with the development, I think the road ordinance may be more of a priority than short-term rentals, which is hard to believe. But, if it's something that could be, researched again through 3 prior ordinances that the the planning commissioners did it, years ago, review them and submit them to, is it Gordy Fraser?
Yes.
The consultant, and then we could kind of like push that, ahead.
I think Randy could speak on this. What I understand is that we don't really need the ROS committee to do what we need
Yeah,
to do.
I understand.
Yeah, I think we could get that done pretty quickly and
Do that ourselves.
relying on Gordy Fraser to help us if we're with private road ordinances and Griffins County, we can provide them with what's been done in the past, we can provide them with. I guess, in my mind, again, the private road ordinance is only new roads, it is just really basically putting something in place so that a developer is gonna help it, you have some standards.
So you don't think we need to do anything.
I don't think it's gonna concern much time. I think you want to, because.
Yeah, let the board know.
Commission, so.
It really seems like more of an engineering.
Yeah.
It is, I mean, it's the road geometry, it's the materials in the road, it's the. And it's also the process by which you guarantee the improvements are gonna be built once you approve a subdivision, so. A site condo, that has multiple lots.
So didn't we talk about too that the short-term rentals would be the first topic of the ROS? So couldn't we also say if there are people that have more interest in capital improvements and being part of the committee at that point, we could say, when we get to that topic, you would join on and, maybe other people drop off.
Well, the issue I see here is that there will be points where there'll be a lax of work to do. There will be points where they're waiting for a survey, they're waiting for, this or that. And during those times, then you could take up issues like this kind of improvements. So what I would like to see us, and this will part of our agenda for next month, is coming up with the list of things we want the ROS to do. So right now, we're gonna look at, this is what the ROS is going to be. How we're gonna, fill it. And then for next month, hopefully she'll have a lot of interest and there'll be so many people who have to pick through them, but yeah, I'm not sure that's gonna happen, but.
So just to be clear too, the development of the capital improvement plan, they very well likely include some consultant support. For us as well, because we're talking about this building, we're talking about a new fire station, we're talking about park improvements, trail improvements, lots of things that require some design expertise that we don't have. And you're an architect, but I don't think you're gonna design buildings for us.
That's not really my strong suit.
Resident.
Yeah.
But you understand the
Yes.
design process, and you understand that there's conceptual design and there's design development and there's.
So it will be more fluid, I think. It's not like you're just gonna start one and end it, and start another one and end it. I think it'll be going through it. I think to the point of, you know, if you have more interest in that, you know, and you should join right along with them. You know, and then when it talks to capital improvements, you can say, you know, you take up that part of it. And-
Yeah, that's not a problem for me. I just want to make sure that we have people that understand that it's, you know, two topics here and there may be other topics. Yeah,
Right?
exactly.
Exactly. So, but like being said, she listed it, I think it's gonna be data gathering, so,
Right.
you know. Sorry, go ahead.
I'm just, what is the initial start for the road incentive? Who's going to start it? Is it the planning commission? Is it going to be the township board?
I think it'd be good.
I feel like I guess we can engage going for it to next week.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then we have 3 old ordinances that were rejected that we could maybe get some feedback from the people who worked on it, what the public comments were at the time that prevented them from being passed. I had someone in mind, so.
I kinda got lost here where we're all at, but again, we're talking about the applications process and getting people interested, so what Reen had. Oh, is everybody okay with that? She read there? That's something we can go ahead and move forward. Might wanna shorten it down for the papers, I'm not sure how that works, but. I think we can.
You don't have to shorten it for the two that, but I guess.
Right, I just added to the second paragraph at the end that ROS members from the public will be paid $75 per meeting.
So is our ultimate goal then to choose the members at the next meeting? Okay. What I thought we got that one.
Do we have a number in mind of people?
Well, I put 5 to 7.
Yeah.
If you're going to be on it with me, then that would be, you know, 3 to
Yeah.
5 people. I'm inclined to go for the larger number just because there is a bit of work to do.
Great.
I think you guys will have a lot of interest in people just coming and sitting, like they talked about, sitting at the movies. Not be a formal one, but.
And then the budget piece of the ROS, that's why the cost per meeting would be important. So it'd be 120, 220 plus 300 be 520 meeting if you have 5 residents in the 2 of you. So then how many meetings do you think you're going to take or need, and then what we have in the budget, so that might be next month's budget.
We're just trying to kind of get a structure here
Yeah.
today. Okay, so you have anything else on that, Reen?
No,
Okay.
I'm gonna send this out.
All right, what I'd like to do is work off a brand new sheet that we had. There were some things that were mentioned in the meeting. Let's see. We'll try to get through this because I know we have somebody waiting to talk to us on
The size of the piece of work.
is that? Okay. Well, I guess if we're looking at people for.
Do you want to make more edits and come back? Next
Yes,
month?
I think that's probably what we're gonna have to do. I'd like you to all think about, this is a couple important things that I got from our meeting last. We gotta figure out how we're gonna get all the correspondence. How we want that. Now, are we gonna wanna all look at that as a board first, or we want the ROS to look at it and then give us the highlights of it? Or how does that look for you guys? From my understanding, a lot of it, so I mean, that's something I think the ROS could sit through and
Yeah.
maybe give us the data. Anybody opposed to that?
I'm sorry, I think I missed the beginning of what you were saying. Which correspondence are you referring to?
Correspondence that they have in their book,
Okay,
For the STRs,
yes. Yeah, and will it be correspondence on anything that we pick up to do? ROS.
well, my initial thought is that I would like the ROS to see all of it.
Right.
And use that as, part of our data and research.
And it should be available to everybody on the PC.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
I hate that to say this, but it's almost like, they're gonna have to produce another book for us. Something that has all the correspondence that we're gonna need. I mean, we can't be pulling it out of the book from there during meetings and. I know you sit up there, but does that seem outrageous to you?
No, I think it should share all the information we have. I mean, I think just the time involved here, but it's.
Unfortunately, it's
I mean,
meetings that we have to have.
I agree.
Is,
Comments that have been received from it,
Yeah,
How about if you scan it onto
Yeah.
thumb drives? I mean, everybody's got laptops provided by the township. If you had it on a thumb drive and it's a scan, either a thumb drive or
the problem is which thumb drive is right, who gets what data and. She has something different than you have.
Maybe you take like one.
Yeah, but the minute you download a computer and
They
it goes
wrote
to
another
them.
letter.
Well, I'm just saying,
Well, that's the problem, there's emails flowing to different people, to.
do we have a server here where we can have a folder that the stuff can be uploaded to that we can access?
okay, not yet.
Well, we have an IT guy, right? We can ask
There
him.
might be a way to do that, I'm saying.
Trying to get it on OneDrive.
I mentioned this at the joint meeting, I would like to have, if it's an electronic, if it's an email, I would like to have it in electronic form so that I can easily put it into an Excel spreadsheet, so. So the scans don't work for me in that respect, but if it's a paper letter, then a scan would be fine.
At this point, I'm not sure they're gonna even have emails and try to find them.
Oh,
They
you're
have
not
them in
gonna
the
have many
books.
more.
Well, they probably have, I think they have to keep them, don't they?
When you click.
To search for them and find them all. I'm just not sure how to ask for this, but. My thought was at this point was, if we at least had one book that we knew was correct, that had everything in it. That was available to just us. And that they kept that updated. At least it would give us something, and then maybe the ROS could go through it and put it into some kind of a, on Excel or something. That just, forward his, any comments, that type of thing.
We'll find a way to make it.
Sure.
It's doable.
If you can do it on a drive that everybody can get to, I guess that would be the best.
Yeah, electronic would be so much better than a binder.
See what we can come up with it. Okay, so we're looking at hopefully 7 numbers. Timeline. Just think about this timeline, I know they had talked about
Months.
6 months.
Yeah.
From the time, that clarifies it, from the time that we got our board, our west, so we'll see if we can get that to work. I'll just come up with another
I can
draft
send
of
you a
this,
word version of that. You can edit
if
it.
you would, that would be great. And I'll try to have it ready for next month. Because we need to be involved. Okay. You want to talk about updates of definitions or?
That's all.
Okay.
When you talk about the words that. Initially, I was doing that, and then it was suggested that it was not useful unless it was attached to an ordinance. And just to give definitions of words without ordinances was wasting people's time.
Okay, we don't want to do that, so let's move on.
Some of that will happen with the work we're talking about.
Okay, well, we're up to that now, so.
Postponing the agenda or the definition section, then is that what you're?
Or eliminating them.
Yeah, at this point, we don't know what we're gonna do with them, so. For further discussion, left for further discussion.
You want to take a break or are we good to go right into this?
Does anybody need a break real quick? Go ahead. Let's go.
So let me introduce this next topic here with the zoning ordinance assessment. We sent out for RFQ for qualifications from planning consultants. We got several back. We chose Webster to help us with work. They gave us a work scope, and the first of which was doing the zoning assessment to look at the various shortcomings of our existing zoning ordinance. They have done that and are here to give us their results, and there they are. They're green, so it's.
Hi.
Okay.
Hi, everyone. Are you able to hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yes, yes, we can hear you fine.
Great. Thank you for letting us zoom in. I'm just opening up my screen a little bit more. My name is Jill Boehm, and I'm a partner at Giffords Webster, a planning consultant. And as Randy was indicating, we have been working with the township, looking at your zoning ordinance and prepared a little zoning update for you. With me, I have Andy Amott. Do you want to say hello?
Hello, everybody. I'm Andy Amott. I'm a senior planner with Giffords Webster, and I'm happy to be working with you. I recently helped your neighbor with their zoning rewrite, East Bay Township. So looking forward to this project with you all.
Thanks. So I know that you, it's been, you've already had a good full meeting. And you've covered a lot of ground. So it's been really interesting. Andy and I have been just kind of lurking in the background, listening in on your discussions. And it's interesting because having gone through your ordinance and then hearing some of the discussions that you've had, trying to get through, like, what are these things? What does this mean? How do we apply it? How do we think about changing it? Thinking about the process. It's really helpful to hear you in action. And I'm almost wondering if the next time we do this, we listen in on a planning commission meeting or two before we even write the zoning assessment. But one of the things that we do at Giffords Webster, we're a multidisciplinary consulting firm. We are in the planning group. We've got about 10 planners. We primarily are working out of Southeast Michigan, but we do have clients around the state, including, as Andy said, East Bay Township is one of our recent ones. We're also working with Suttons Bay Township on a master plan and zoning update as well. We are really pleased to be working with you. And I kind of want to stop for just a second because I know when I talked to Randy earlier, he said you had a big meeting agenda, and I said, well, how long do you want me to talk? And he said, well, we meet as late as 11 o'clock, and I don't know that everybody wants to do that on a regular basis. So I do want to check in and see how everybody's feeling, because I can do this pretty quickly and then leave us with some next steps, which is kind of where I think I might go. How are you all feeling? Do you need a break or anything?
No, let's get on with it.
All right. So what I think I'll do is I'm going to kind of run through the audit real quick, and then we'll talk about some next steps. And then we can have a conversation to the extent that we are able to do that. Can I share my screen? And if I do share my screen, are you able to see that okay?
You can try.
Try it, we'll let you know.
Okay, that's fair. All right, so I'm going to send a request to be able to share my screen.
Go
Um,
Right. I can allow, but
oh, it says the host isn't allowing multiple presenter sharing for this meeting. Oh, excellent. Okay. I'm gonna look at screen 2, and I will share this one with you. All right, so I think you should see what's just 2 pages. One's table of contents, and the first page is the summary. Do you see that?
Yes.
It's very small.
yeah.
It's very small. Okay. Well, what I'm going to do, we're not going to read everything on this page because clearly that would never work anyway. But I wanted to kind of highlight what's in the report. So why would we do a zoning audit in the first place? You have identified as a planning commission and likely your township board too, I know you had a joint meeting last week. Identifying that there are some issues with your zoning ordinance. So how do we even begin to understand the things that are opportunities to be improved? So we kind of take a look through this. We really go through line by line in the zoning ordinance and probably could go through it a few more times to get more in depth. But I don't know that we necessarily need to do that. We kind of look at a few things. So the first thing and the most important thing we look at is the alignment with your master plan. Your master plan is fresh. You just did that earlier in the year. And that is our basis for our zoning ordinance. The Michigan Planning Enabling Act says if you are a community that has zoning, that zoning has to be based on your master plan. So that's the first thing that we look at. And so you'll see that here in the table of contents. And we will send you this after the meeting. This is just helpful for us to go through it with you here. And then we look at each section. So we have what we've shown your master plan alignment. We go through a little bit of discussion on that. And then we go through, we copied in here the summary of your community goals. It's nice to have that handy as a reference to what we know is in your master plan and how that relates to your zoning districts. And then we really went through, we looked at all of your definitions. Generally speaking, most of the definitions are pretty good. You could really benefit from some graphics to illustrate key points. One of them I show here is the definition for building height. Would be great. This is a pretty standard definition that you have. Most people probably, if they're familiar with ordinances, know what it means, but having a graphic is so much better. To be able to really understand what like a deck line is of a mansard roof. There are a few things, there's a few terms that are defined but not used. So maybe we don't need them. So maybe we'd clear those out. There are some that may be confusing and some of the things that we highlight. Impervious surface should be defined because it's used a couple of times. Floor area is defined, but it's used in different ways, and particularly when we get to the parking section, we can look at that a little bit. The definition of highway is confusing because it includes any public thoroughfare. And then we also have major streets that are defined later. So there's a few things. Institutional premises is included, it's actually included twice, but it only applies to signs. And so there's some things where we're like, do we really need to have these? What we're looking for is, if we go back to the beginning, what we're really trying to do here is direct growth and development through our zoning ordinance as we've envisioned in our master plan. We want our zoning ordinance to be well organized, intuitively organized to the extent we're able to do that. Make sure that our language is clear, concise, and easy to understand, including clear illustrations that explain our text, including the zoning map for easy reference. Be consistent with state and federal law as well as related case law. One of the things that's really important that sometimes we don't think about, well, we think about it, but communities may not think about it, planning commissions may not think about it, but we want to make sure that our outcomes are consistent and predictable. And that's one of the things, and I think that maybe even some of your discussion tonight could be easier if you had some clearer standards and some clearer processes for things. But we really want the applicants, property owners to know like, okay, I know if I go through this process, I'm either going to get approved or I'm not. It's similar to this one that got approved before. So my process should be the same and my outcome should be the same. When you.
Can I pause for a second?
What was that?
But pause just for a second.
Yeah.
Can you maybe shut your microphone off?
Oh, is it too quiet?
Not yours, I'm sorry, Carl's. Carl, shut your microphone off.
Just turn it off.
But it's got a feedback, it's hard to hear. I think it's on the top.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's.
It's just hearing.
That's a little better.
Yes, this one over here, Keith.
What's coming out of the speaker?
No, Carol.
Oh, there we go.
Oh, I said when you did this, when you were doing this, it stopped.
This is your.
Okay. All right, go ahead. Sorry for the interruption.
Okay, no problem. And then the last little guiding principle for zoning health, the zoning ordinance is accessible and easy to find. So you'll be able to, when you have this on your website and you do, it's just nice to be able to point to it and have people find things very easily. So it's kind of the highlight. As we go through, you'll see again, looking at the district standards after the definitions, and we kind of broke this into just following the way that your ordinance is organized today. And you'll see some of the highlights. I would say that I know you already have the list that Randy prepared. And no surprise, it is pretty much what we found. And it was really cool because I read it, his summary, and I was like, okay. And then I went through the whole ordinance, and then I went back to his summary, and I was like, oh yeah, we agree on that. We agree on that. We agree, like everything in Randy's, I agree with, and it's all included in our report too. We just have a little bit more detail, and it's a little bit more fleshed out. A little blurb in here on fair housing. Housing is something that I recognize that you noticed in your master plan. And there's some opportunities to maybe clarify how you're going to regulate those things, housing in your zoning ordinance. Some of the dimensional standards, I think the presentation of them in a table is helpful, but when most of the standards are the same, then you kind of wonder, is that really necessary? The district intent statements, I would say are really thin. And one of the ways that you may have felt that could be improved is when you're making land use decisions like special land uses or rezonings. We want to be able to look at that intent statement from that zoning district, the to or the from zoning, to really get a better feel for what is this district all about. So that would be one thing that I would say, is a pretty much across each district, those could be improved. When you get into your supplemental development and use standards, there's a variety of different questions that we had, and really these are more questions. We wouldn't come at you and say, oh, you're doing this all wrong. No, this is just, these are our observations. These are some best practices. Here's some areas that you might want to think about or you might want to improve. I would say that the two, and Randy did have, you've noted these, the corridor overlay PUD is kind of confusing because it's not clear if it's required or if it's optional. And I think you've got some really good opportunities to make some improvements there. And then the plan unit development one was also very interesting. It felt more like, and then the acronym, the ROS, I kept thinking of that when you were saying the residents ordinance committee. I was thinking residential open space as a kind of tool that you could use to also, I think, get to the same place that you are with the PUD, but maybe be more clear, like this is really more for residential. Moving on, your parking and loading. I like how, and I've not really seen it before, you have a requirement that half of the parking is not paved. And that's an interesting approach. And I think, though, you could go a little bit further and just not let people park on the grass or park on those areas and just defer it. So deferred parking, if you're also trying to reduce impervious surfaces, deferred parking certainly helps that. Shared parking, and there's an opportunity to improve that section too. Because right now you say, well, if you have this use and you're together, all your parking for this and all your parking for that is together. But maybe if one use is primarily in the daytime and one use is primarily like late afternoon and evening, they don't need to have all that parking and they could share some of that parking. So that could be another opportunity. And then the third one would be to lower some of the parking standards. I think some of them they've just probably been there for a while, and it's probably time to give an update to those. Landscape standards, I think those also could be enhanced a little bit. They're pretty good. Lighting is another one. That's one that I think you mentioned, dark skies, and I think the master plan talked about wanting to reduce light pollution, or at least you're aware of light pollution. This section seems pretty dated, especially when it's referring to sodium pressure lamps and metal halide lamps. Certainly moving into LED. You may not even need to reference the kind of lamp anymore, but definitely those full cutoff fixtures. I liked the motion sensors and things like that too. You might think about color temperature. also as something that communities are starting to recognize the importance of specifying that, and LED lights specifically are really able to dial in that color temperature and make sure it's not too blue. Your sign section needs to be updated pursuant with the Reed versus the Town of Gilbert Supreme Court case, really, which is 10 years old now. And I don't know how much you are aware of that case, but essentially it at its root was just saying that all temporary signs, and primarily temporary signs that this is addressing, need to be treated the same way. And so you've got different kinds of signs that we call them different things. And so most of the direction for updated sign ordinances is just to treat all temporary signs the same way, and not really call them out by name, to be more content neutral. So we can talk about those things as that comes up. Mobile home standards also, I think there's some updating that could be done there, particularly where they're permitted. They are, when they're not in a park, a mobile home is permitted anywhere a single family home is. And so that was something that I noticed. And then additional standards to consider: access management. That's something that your master plan identifies, having some access management standards in your zoning ordinance, particularly with respect to driveway spacing, and then offset driveways. Really important for improving traffic flow, but really improving traffic safety. Groundwater protection standards and performance standards, I know that you had talked about, or Randy had mentioned that you had some of those. That plus wetlands and steep slopes that you'd had in your ordinance before and they'd been removed. So maybe exploring those again. Wireless communications facilities also needs to be updated with state and federal law. It's pretty dated. And so you want to make sure that you've got a current code for that. Evolving agriculture, you were talking about that earlier with the farm market, and I think related the wineries too. So some things to explore. I didn't go into a whole lot of detail there, but that can be something that we look at as we go forward. Alternative energy, outdoor dining is something, especially thinking about your village area. And then getting into the development procedures, the site plan review. I really thought that those were the site plan review section was pretty straightforward. It's good that you allow some administrative review and approval. That's helpful. I would maybe move that up in there just from an organizational standpoint. I thought that land use permits, maybe you want to look at the wording to zoning permits, or zoning compliance permits, because it does seem like it maybe could be confusing if you think about land use permits and special land use permits. So kind of a small thing, but it can be helpful. And then your noticing requirements. I did notice you've got a couple, like 3 different kinds of standards for noticing. And just going with the Michigan Planning Enabling Act, 15 days, and there's a list, you put one of those in your code and all of the public hearings follow the same process. Administration and enforcement, nonconformities, you addressed all of those. We can talk further too if you have special concerns about nonconforming structures or uses. And the ZBA. One of the things that I did notice and this did come up with you this evening, is the idea of the use variance. And I know that they can, very rarely they can be useful. In the 17 years that I've been a planning consultant, and I was a city planner before that, I don't think I saw hardly any. I did have one probably 8 years ago or 7 years ago, maybe. But they really, and I think that Randy, you kind of articulated this too during the meeting. That is really, as we said, like the planning commission creates the master plan. The planning commission does all the research and preparation of the zoning ordinance, and then township board adopts it. The zoning board of appeals job is to really uphold those ordinances, and where they may grant relief for unusual situations is good. But when you have someone that has a lot, it's very challenging for that person to demonstrate that they can't use it for anything else that it's permitted in that district, or that what they'd like to do, they couldn't do elsewhere. So I think those two things together just kind of lead you to that end result that if we don't have to do use variances, that we might not want to. Because they're just, it takes away that authority from the planning commission and the township board, and gives it to the ZBA. And that's really something that's different from some of the other things that they would typically do. The only other thing I noticed with regard to the ZBA is there was a comment about the planning commission or township board members who sit on the ZBA can't vote in matters. And I don't know if this is the case or not, but I like to point it out. That's only if there's an appeal of the decision of the township board, which wouldn't happen necessarily, but or the planning commission. If there's a variance request, like a dimensional variance for something that goes through site plan review, that's different. So it's really just looking at the decision of that body. We included some couple just few bullet points about sustainability, looking at housing. Some of this is repeated. So we talk about stormwater, native and invasive species, building materials, again, alternative energy, land uses, and natural resource protection. That natural resource protection overlay, that might be an opportunity to think about with respect to the R1 district that runs along the waterways. If that's the thing that you were trying to address with that zoning like that. So that I'm gonna leave my screen open for a moment. Well, I'll close it for a second because I want to know if anybody has any questions about anything that I've mentioned so far. Again, you'll have a copy of this to look through it.
I think we're good. No,
Okay.
good.
All right. So I think, so what I heard you all talking about a couple of different kinds of ordinance amendments that you're working towards. And when you're faced with like a whole ordinance that you're like, oh, there's all these things in here that we want to amend. And even I think with your ROS, the committee, I think giving them very specific directions and guidelines will be beneficial for everybody. It'll give them a feeling of, okay, we know what our job is here. This is what we're researching, and help them understand what they're doing and what they're looking for. Because you can go out and you can find a variety of ordinances, for example, on short-term rentals, but what are they looking for? If they bring you 20 different examples, how will you decide what works for you and what doesn't? So I think giving them direction of what your concerns are, right? But when we have this whole list of things that we want to amend, what we'd like to do is we'd like to help you. I did want to share my screen again, with a survey that we'll send out to you after this meeting, where we'll give you the issues and larger bullet points, and then we'll have you do some ranking. So we'll have you assess whether something is, zoom in here, high priority or low priority, high effort or low effort in your opinion. This is just an example what I put in these boxes. But the idea here is that we might work on some more challenging amendments, or you might work on some easier amendments at the same time so that you can feel like you're making some progress, but you have a plan. With that, I don't know if I can share. I think I have to redo, hold on 1 second, because I have another thing I want to show you. Oh, I guess you can see it. Can you see this spreadsheet?
Yeah.
Okay, this is an example of something that we did for a community last year where they had a slew of amendments. These are all the amendments that they wanted to address. This was from one of our later meetings that we had with them as we were getting, this actually looked like the 4th meeting that we had with them last year. So we had a color-coded list on the side, kind of running checklist of what we finished, what we're still in progress, and what we still need to introduce. And then we made a plan for that. So we said, we had like, here's where we're going to introduce it. Here's where you're going to review it. And that way people can understand like, okay, we've got a plan. We know where we're going. Other benefit is if you do have interested members of the community who are like, I'm really interested in landscaping and I want to know when they're talking about that. that they can look at your checklist, it's on your website, and they can say, oh, good, it looks like their third meeting in March. I'm gonna make sure I go to that meeting because that's when they're gonna talk about something that I want to talk about. So that's helpful. It helps keep you organized and help you know what comes next. Because I do have the experience with planning commissions who just get kind of overwhelmed by everything and feel like we're never making any progress. We keep going back and forth on things. And so I think this really helped that planning commission stay very focused and very organized, and it went really well. One of the other things that I wanted to show you is this is just an example too, and I'll send you one of these also, just so you can get a feel for it, is the way that we help you with these amendments, where it would give you a topic. So in this case, this was for, they had a question about whether auto repair could be a home-based business or not. So when we present a memo, this was a midway through, so we had already talked about it one time. When we talked about it, what did we talk about? So we have a memo that covers what we talked about at the last meeting. We might go back in the meeting before that too, so that everybody's got that right at the top. Proposed language, but then what we always have in here are some discussion questions. So, okay, we've given you this information, this language. What are you going to do with it? The next steps. What do we do next? Well, if you like it, you can set a public hearing. But then what we do is we keep in the memo all the background information. So if you miss a meeting and you're like, well, what did we talk about last time? Or if it's been 4 months that you've been talking, and I have had this happen, 4 months that you've been talking about something, and finally someone's like, what were we trying to do in the first place? Like, what was the point of this from the beginning? Well, here it is. We kept that in there so that we don't get off track, because a lot of times we can go wandering off into the wilderness because we found an interesting provision in an ordinance that we thought was interesting, and now we don't know what we're doing anymore. So having that here, that can help the chair as you were leading this meeting. If people are going off topic, say, you know what, it seems to me like what we were talking about originally was this, and this is what we're trying to accomplish. So just kind of keeping that as a way to help you stay organized. So I think I'm going to stop there because it's 10 o'clock and I want to check in with you and see what kind of questions you have for me, or what information that we can provide to you, or what you would like to hear more about.
It's that point of order at 3 hours, we have to decide whether to go ahead or not.
Right. Well, I think, I'm wrapping this up pretty quickly if, we don't want to cut you too short, but, we do need to wrap this up. I would like to mention, I love the list that you had up there. I hope that's something we can do there, so.
I just have a follow-up question. Did I hear you say, Jill, that you would put together a survey for us? That
Yes.
all of the issues that you identified.
Yes.
Maybe we could get to, and then have us rank them in terms of importance, and then all the planning commission members would get to contribute to that.
Yeah.
Sort of our program.
Yeah, and then we can bring that back to you for your next meeting.
Right. Do we have to do something to continue this for another few months?
You should ask if we want to continue the meeting or not. A motion to continue the meeting.
I'm willing to continue the meeting.
That's 3 hour mark.
That's the 3 hour mark. Second.
Merchant second.
Thank you.
All in favor? Any opposed? Carried. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Sorry you had to wait so long.
That's okay. It was interesting. Like I said, it's kind of like, it is interesting sitting in a meeting that you had nothing to do with, like, like didn't put together any of the materials, my item's not on there. But really listening in to hear, like, what are you talking about? Like, where are the things that are sticking points for you? And so it was a very interesting way to hear you all work together. But you're all very engaged, and I really commend you all for your dedication and your enthusiasm to stick around this late in the evening and be so thoughtful. So
Thank you, and the documents will get here pretty soon, or?
What's that?
Will we see the documents here shortly? the
Yeah,
next week?
we'll send them to you. I want to just clean up a little bit more in that report, but we'll send it out at the end by the end of the week. It's almost the end of the week now, but
Okay.
and we'll
Okay.
send you the survey too, so that you can work on that and then get it back, and then we can talk about it next time.
All right. Did I see you had a rank in terms of quadrants, like whether it's more substantial versus something easy to fix?
Yes. Yeah, that's like the effort. So whether we think things might be really pretty easy to do, we could chunk a couple of those out, the easy ones, even if they're not a high priority, just to get some things done that'll make a difference. So.
Right.
And then you can decide too, when we think about when we're amending the ordinances, how to do the public hearing on all of these. It can be overwhelming to have multiple sections of the ordinance being amended at the same time. So that might be another reason to do them in smaller chunks where you're like, okay, we're gonna do these 5 and we're gonna hold the public hearing, and then we're gonna do these 4 and we're gonna hold public hearing. So, but we can figure all that out going forward.
I think that's what we envisioned, was doing it in chunks that we could get
Yeah.
bite-sized pieces to work our way through it.
Yep. Sounds good.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks. I look forward to meeting you all in person.
Thank you, Andy.
Thank you.
Nice to meet you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Andy.
All right, moving along, we do have a meeting to 22nd, that wasn't changed. It was on the 4th of July there. I was trying to look for our calendar, I thought I had.
Is there like a big calendar too? Cause did you get like a calendar like of everything's mapped out? Or is it always just
On the township.
just on there? Okay, so that's where you put it. I don't know if it was the one that we get. Okay, never mind.
Just wanted to double check on that.
It's July, not on the board, it's not down the wall.
July 9th.
July 9th.
July 9th.
I thought we moved it because the 4th of July, so I'll have to make that correct.
That's not what's on the website. I don't know,
What's on the,
it's whatever you submitted to the clerk.
no, that's what I was.
So it's the 9th. Did I hear?
I'm gonna look right here, see what it says here.
I think you guys wanted it on the 2nd.
Did we?
Don't hold me to it,
Yeah, I have it July 2nd on my phone.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, well, so the next meeting is July 2nd. 7 p.m. Public comment. Thanks for sticking it out.
Yeah. That was all interesting. First of all, thank you guys again. Last meeting I was here, I thank you all for your time. I just want to address the noise issue from AIS that was stated in the last meeting and then this meeting. So, as a property owner directly behind there, and us property owners are directly behind there, that field, the noise just, it flows there. So I went in and I talked to, thank you. And, I told them all my concerns. We had a great talk, and I mean, I needed to talk to the source. And I said, he said, I never had a complaint. I said, you know what, Craig? I mean, we're all active, busy people. We don't go around saying, gosh, the noise. I mean, I don't. Just like, oh, there's the noise again, in the beeping. And I think, once he realized that was, they bought sensors for the equipment that's going to be used, so that's obviously, I know that's what that equipment does, like you have to have beepers. We all know that, that's what the business is, and so like, oh, there's the noise again, and it does ring and ring and ring. And once he realized that, we just don't complain, sorry, I mean, that's what the business is, I don't go and complain. And so, he got the sensors, and then with the burn, gonna go in, that's gonna help with the noise too. So I just wanted to address that the reason we all didn't say anything is because we know that's what that business is, and that over time it just got more and more and more and more, and they moved back. So the concern was if they were moving further back, that the noise would be even more. And it, you know how loud those are, they just, it rings in your ears. And it comes across the field, it does, so we didn't complain. And on that note, I've lived on that road for 40 years and I've never complained about the buses. Because the last 10 years, they fly down that road. And if you guys have ever gone down that road, no bus should fly down Moore Road or Crisp Road, especially, I don't know. So I called and complained for the first time like a month ago. And I'm not sure that really got me anywhere because the buses still fly down there and I think they kind of look at me like, so they know I'm on the road all the time, running or walking. I try to avoid when they're there because of the dust. But they clearly see me because I'm visible. And so I kind of like have it. So to address the issue of why there's no complaint, like, I don't know. They just don't go around complaining, like. They gotta pick your battles and so I just wanted to address the noise issue and oops, sorry, he was very, very accommodating and everything. We talked several times, we gave drawings, we walked around. And those were just the concerns. He said the noise is gonna, and they had their vendors that come in early in the morning with the big trucks that back up. He said they stop way out, they haven't stopped at a certain point. And I said, that's really going above and beyond. I mean, that's great, but we just didn't complain because that's what the business is. You gotta have beepers for backup things. I don't know. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Since there's just really 3 of you there. Four, oh, let's see, Mike decides.
I just want to share real quickly, on behalf of folks that aren't still here at 10 o'clock, on 2 issues. The short-term rentals, I understand wanting to take a few minutes to take a look at it. But you have something that has been submitted per the ordinance, paid for. The difference between other topics that are brought forward, someone brought you an ordinance and paid to have you evaluate it, to consider it and to move it forward. So I really want to encourage you, don't just let it drop. Don't pause, don't try to look for different answers. It can be changed again next year when you see how it works, but those contracts go out at the latest by August. So by August, next year's contracts for most short-term rentals will be signed. Those properties are committed to. So it's really messing with people's finances to put it off. Even if you do something as simple as put that ordinance forward, so they say, okay, yeah, we know we're good for next year, here are the standards, here are the guidelines, they may change next year, but we know where we stand. That matters a lot. On AIS, a lot of folks had to leave. But I want to give you a little feedback from those who had to take off. They didn't feel heard to a great extent. AIS did not reach out to the people in the notification area and offer to have a meeting or offer to answer questions. Because several of us are in that notification district and we got nothing. So yes, Lisa, I don't know if you reached out to them or vice versa.
His lawyer said, because of the way the meeting went last time, his lawyer advised him not to go to people and have them come to him.
Okay. But we weren't told that.
I don't know either, I just went in.
Exactly, and that's fine. But just so from your conversation, it sounded a lot like the planning commission was under the impression that they had held a meeting and met with people. There was no meeting. Okay, and it really did feel like planning commission did not hear the hard pass. Definitely not anything else. You made a few adjustments, but it was a bit of a disappointment. Thank you.
Mike Jacobson, Ski Mark Point Road. I'm in favor of you helping AIS. They're a great asset to this community. I forget the gentleman's name, but to hear him talk, he's willing to bend over backwards to do whatever it takes to appease the people in the neighborhood. They own the property, they're not interested in selling it. And I don't think the community is really interested in losing it, so I hope you can find a compromise that will work for everybody. About this civil infraction ordinance that's coming up, I've expressed this before and I want to say it again. In my opinion, it's a way for neighbors to pick on neighbors. And I'm gonna reference Deb's zoning report about this firewood issue. If I'm correct, and I might be wrong, but if it's the lot I'm thinking about, or that I think it is, that lot is agriculture. So I'm not sure that the person is actually doing anything wrong there. I get that Deb's getting some complaints and she's trying to get some compliance, but if any of you have ever done firewood, you handle firewood a lot. Okay, a lot. Every single piece you handle multiple times. Okay, if the man is trying to make money on firewood, he can't handle it any more times than he absolutely has to. And I have no idea what's going on down there. I don't know if it was green or dry, I don't know. But when the wood's ready to be sold, you picked up, thrown in the trailer and gone. So this neighbor picking on neighbor thing, it is not what this community is about or ever been about. And this guy just related that conversation about not complaining. Okay, when Deb contacted me about cleaning up my yard, one of the things that she mentioned, one of the very first things she mentioned was my signs. And then this gal here is talking about our sign ordinance isn't in compliance. I even wonder if it's constitutional at times. And then I look around the community and I wonder, am I being told I gotta take my signs down because they favor one political party? And I look around the neighborhood and I see signs that favor the other political party and they seem to be not being picked on. So this civil infraction stuff is a way for people to pick on each other. I don't like it. Thank you for your time. I think you're all doing a good job. And I appreciate that you listen.
Thank you. Since there's nobody else. The discussion comments for PC members review, we discussed it, right? Does anybody else have any last thing you want to mention? Reminder about what next meeting?
Just one thing, I thought I would send you guys the ordinance that I already sent from other townships, it's in the March packet. If you look back to the March packet, it's in there, I'll still try to send a copy, but they are in there.
And on the website in the March packet, if you.
In the March packet, it has like the other townships ordinance, I'm like, oh crap, it's no, and that's where I sent it, I knew I sent it somewhere, so it's in the March packet. So I'll still try to find maybe.
Okay, continue education, that's just some documents in there from the training deck. People can do those if can. Make a motion that we adjourn for the night. Second. Roll call.
Roll call?
Is that a roll call? No?
We've been meaning to take roll call off of that agenda format for a while.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Maybe next month.
Thank you all.
10:16.
Almost got out of here, Ted.
I slide that river. Thanks. You didn't get it. Yeah, and I just. I don't know this. I'm just. Okay. I'm going to make. So it's. Mental that were original. Yeah. So fights the. Yeah. They're that. Wow. Revise that, thanks. Discussion tonight. Yeah. I think so. A neighbor, super fun. I have a reason to that's an excellent day. And they got down the tree and they dragged the tree this long. When you step down, take off the layer. Yes.